This is Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily with Andrew Hustler Paterson and Michael Remis.
Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to a Monday edition of Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Hope you had a great weekend, and whew, what a sports weekend it was. Big win for the Bombers. Jets continued their preseason. The Ryder Cup was handed out in Italy. The Blue Jays clinched a playoff spot. And a big Sunday in the National Football League yesterday, and we will get to it all over the next couple hours here on WST. Jeff Hamilton from the Winnipeg Free Press is going to be jumping on with us, and we'll spend plenty of time right off the hop talking about the Jets, who are in action tonight in Calgary in their second last preseason game. Not on TSN tonight. This is the other game that you'll have to watch at winnipegjets.com, but it will be available for people that want to see it. And there were a number of players that were reassigned to the Moose over the course of the weekend. And we'll get a little look ahead to Moose training camp beginning today with Dan Fink coming up in the second hour of the program. So lots to get to today. Welcome, everybody in chat. Folks, if you're watching this and you haven't already subscribed to the YouTube channel, now's the time to press that button. Completely free. We are just over 50 subs away from the elusive 10,000 mark. Our goal is to get there by next Wednesday when the Jets drop the puck with the Calgary Flames on the season. So if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. Give us a thumbs up for the episode while you're at it. And tell a friend about Winnipeg Sports Talk and how they can join us Monday to Fridays here on the WST channel. Big thanks to the sponsors that make the show happen each and every day. Of course, our partners at Coolbet, Princess Auto, Consolidated Supply, Little Brown Jug, Boston Pizza, and Royal Sports, Nick and Nicky DQ Group, F Apparel, Vita Health, Wallace & Wallace, Manitoba Battery, Canadian Club, Aquatech, and Modern Man Barber Shop. Shout out to everybody in chat. What is up, Michael Remis? How was your weekend, buddy?
Pretty good, Huss. We do have some Jets breaking news happening right now. It is 1 p.m. The waiver wire underway. Jansen Harkins got, we're getting to the Jets. He was sent to the Moose over the weekend. There's an illness going through. They had to call him back up. He had to pass through waivers. Just got claimed by Pittsburgh. So we got some breaking news off the top. So,
wow. I mean,
good for Jansen Harkins. They see him get another opportunity. He wasn't getting it here. I mean, he had a great preseason, scored, had points. Got sent down to the Moose in a number of cuts. And they had to put him through waivers to bring him back up. And he got claimed by Pittsburgh. So, good for him. And I see comments in chat, another player they lost for nothing. Like, they weren't playing him at the NHL level. He had gone through waivers last year. No one claimed, no one had put in a claim. Like, no one was going to give anything up for Jansen Harkins. He was a nice depth to have, but they had other guys they like more. And I think you're just happy to see a guy get an opportunity. And that's our breaking news to start the show.
Yeah, I mean, listen, for everyone that, wants to moan every single time a player's picked up off waivers, there's somebody gone for nothing. You can pick guys up for nothing. You lose guys that aren't able to make the big club. That is basically why the waiver wire is set up as it is, to give players that might have an opportunity elsewhere, the chance to do it. So good for Hark. Listen, I was impressed with the way he looked so far in training camp. And I can't say enough about what he did last year at the American Hockey League level. I mean, obviously it's disappointing to pass through waivers last year, to end up going to the American Hockey League when you feel you can contribute at the NHL level. But he had himself a monster half season with the Manitoba Moose. And I think we all realize that with the Dubois trade and 3 players coming back into the Jets top 12, with Dubois leaving, those jobs at the bottom of the depth chart for forwards were even more scarce than they were in the past. And I think Jensen's, I'm sure Remis was looking for an opportunity somewhere else in a change of scenery. So this is a great chance for him to go to Pittsburgh. We'll see what sort of opportunity he gets where he's playing. And obviously, if he doesn't fit in Pittsburgh and they put him back on waivers because he's not fitting in the lineup, Jets will have the opportunity to reclaim him as well. But it's a bit of interesting news right off the bat to start the program.
Yeah, sorry, didn't even get a chance to talk about my weekend and how great it was watching Taylor Swift on Sunday Night Football last night. But it was a nice weekend. We had Bombers Friday. What a fourth quarter comeback that was. I know we'll get into that quite a bit. Jets preseason Friday, you could kind of dual screen that. Saturday, some nice CFL games. And yesterday, I'm just all NFL Sunday for me. So it's fun. It's that time of year. Oh, yeah, and sorry, baseball. There was some big baseball games. Blue Jays kind of backdooring in there. They still got their champagne.
Oh,
still
my
got the
God,
champagne party, yes, after backdooring into the playoffs. So
who is that guy that they started yesterday?
He was not good. That's the hangover, the classic hangover game. In baseball, the hangover lineup.
I don't think this guy's pitched in the majors in 4 years, I saw somebody say. Listen, when they didn't get it done in extras on Saturday, they had to sit back and cheer for the Texas Rangers Saturday night. And listen, that was a huge favor that Texas did the Blue Jays. Because A, they clinched the spot for them. B, they didn't have to use Gosman on the bump in game 162, so he can go for game one of the playoffs. And the other thing it allowed them to do was completely tank the game to finish third, and now they're going to be taking on the Minnesota Twins in the series, as opposed to going up again against the Tampa Bay Rays, who they played 2 of their last 3 series against, and has a far better record than the Twins, who are the lowest ranked of the 3 division leaders. And tell you what, there's a lot of happy Blue Jays fans around here, Reem, that are making the trip down, including our pals Mike and Ken from the Winnipeg Free Press. Sounds like the fellas have a bit of a roadie going on. Leave early tomorrow, get down there. It's a 3:30 p.m. Winnipeg time, Central Time start for Twins Blue Jays tomorrow and on Wednesday. And then the guys will drive back right after the game, get here in the wee hours, and be ready to go for the Jets' preseason finale on Thursday night against Ottawa.
Yeah, Mike texted me yesterday saying, hey, can we switch the Tuesday spot? Because he's going with Kent, so we'll get a nice recap from them. But are there any Jays fans from who listen to the show heading down? Let us know. I went down to when they played the Royals in the ALCS one year. We drove overnight. I wouldn't recommend doing that ever. You and I drove overnight.
I would. It's so easy.
Well, to Minneapolis, yeah, you would do it. Drive overnight. I guess that's not that far.
I've driven overnight to KC a number of times by myself. Never mind. I mean, if you've got some guys, like, I mean, if you've got a few dudes with you or people with you, and other people can take over, I mean, it honestly is the easiest drive around to KC. And Minnesota's shorter. And you go to Fargo, turn left, another 3 hours, you're there. So, anyway, shout out to all the road trippers that are going to get down there for Blue Jays Twins.
There was a Jets tie-in after the Jays clinch. We'll go back to the Jets because they do have some breaking news there. But how about pitcher Eric Swanson us repping the Jets jersey on the field after the Jays clinched? Let me bring this up real quick. Eric Swanson, he's from like Fargo, isn't he? From North Dakota, and his family in Winnipeg, went to Lake of the Woods in the All-Star break. Mike McIntyre
I think it was at Buffalo Point. Yeah, he was down at Buffalo Point, I believe.
Mike McIntyre wrote a nice feature on him in the Free Press this summer, but here he is repping a Jets jersey after they clinched. What a collab.
I'll be honest. Stick tap to whoever from the Jets social media team was ahead of this, planned for this, and executed this. Well, it looks great. As I say, a lot of excitement for the upcoming Jets season next week, but this week it's playoff season, and I know there are a lot of Blue Jay fans that are also Winnipeg Jet fans going to be getting behind the team. But that was a pretty cool touch that the Jets did down in TO on the weekend for Winnipeg Jet fan Eric Swanston, who says he's got to get to a game. Hopefully they'll be busy for the next month or so, and then plenty of time to come out here for a game. As far as the Jets go, and again, we're going to get to the Bombers, and we'll spend a bunch of time talking about the Bombers and looking ahead to this massive game on Friday with the BC Lions with Jeff Hamilton coming up. But let's quickly, Reem, go over the weekend for the Jets, because they lost 3-1 to Ottawa on Friday, with a very, very light lineup. And Jansen Harkins scored again. Maybe that was that gave him a little extra nod towards getting picked up today on the waiver wire by the Pittsburgh Penguins. Elias Salmonson did leave the game after taking a high hit, but he was back on. And once again, I mean, the guy that everyone was talking about coming out of that game, Remo, was Ville Heinola, who had another really strong performance and continues to get better seemingly each time he's out there during this camp.
Ville Heinola, I mean, he's looked so strong, moving the puck, very quickly and defending well. And he's really putting a stamp on this preseason. He's going to get 2 more games, but that's the biggest question coming, and what is going to happen with the defense. And they have a number of injuries, like Nate Schmidt, even who was skating with the extras, and he is not in tonight. And who else? Kyle Capobianco was skating in his own group. He's working back from an injury. So, they might have to delay this Heinola, but I think at a certain point he's played so well, you're almost like slapping him in the face here, being like, all right, Ville, you did everything you need to do. Sorry, your contract says you can go back to the Moose. I mean, it's been a couple of years now since his draft year. He's dominated in the AHL. It's time to give this guy a shot. But unfortunately, they don't have the. Is
he better than the 6 guys that they have at the top of the depth chart? That is what it comes down to.
How can you make that determination? He hasn't been given a shot to prove it. Has he earned a shot to prove? I think so. I think he's earned some time, but I don't. I mean, how do you know if he's played the level you think that he should be playing at the AHL in the preseason so far? But like, they haven't given him a real chance to, like, how many games has he played? And how many did he play last year? Like under 10?
Off the top of my head, I'm going to guess 15 or 16.
He played 10 games last year.
Exactly 10.
10.
Nice
he played
prediction.
12 the year before. He's played 35 NHL games. And wow, parts of 4 seasons. So, drafted 2019. It's 2023. Been like 4 years. 4 years since he was drafted. What's Shane Malloy say? Draft plus 5, then you really know. And he's getting there. This is kind of like a bit of a prove it year here for him.
Yeah, I mean, the problem, and listen, I'm completely with you. I would love to see Ville get a nice run in of NHL games, and maybe feel confident enough that one mistake isn't going to send you back to the press box or elsewhere. But again, it's competitive back on the blue line. I mean, I think Nate Schmidt, Neil Pionk, you can make an argument that Ville can bring some things that some of those players don't. But listen, there's always been a question as to whether the guy can defend at an NHL level, whether he can handle some of the bigger bodies. And you're right. The only one way you're going to find that out is if the young man gets to play. I mean, Rick Bowness said on the weekend that these next 2 games are going to be huge for Ville Heinola. And listen, I'm sure some people will say that's lip service. I mean, we know what the situation is. We know that Ville's able to go on waivers. And listen, as hard as it is to swallow for a player like that, I think we'd all agree, Remis, that a young player needs to play. And I think either Declan Chisholm or Ville Heinola, like, is it great if they make the team? Sure. But if they're not playing on a regular basis, I'm not sure that's good for either of those players. And, unfortunately for Ville in his situation, the team doesn't need to worry about losing him for nothing if they do put him on the waiver wire. So I'll tell you what, if he's on this roster and he's there at the beginning of the season, he will have earned it, because in some ways, just because of the way the CBA works, the deck's been a little bit stacked against him this year with players that were already there, a pretty established pecking order and depth chart amongst the blue liners of the returning players, and the fact that Ville's the one guy that is waivers exempt of that group.
Yeah, we've kind of been waiting for them to like clear out some room for some of these guys, either Chisholm or whoever, and they really haven't. We've been talking for 2 summers now, but okay, what are they going to do with the defense? Who are they going to move? And they've moved nobody, and it seems like they do have some illness going around the team and injury issues, so you may not have to make any decisions. But I mean, he's earned an opportunity for sure. Will they give it to him? It's something to watch. And the other guy, you can bring up the lines for. Should I just bring up the lines here for tonight?
Yeah, for tonight's game, Chef. Sure.
Logan Stanley is the other one too. I'm curious what's going to end up happening with him. And here are the lines. Says there is a game tonight in Calgary, but there was. Here, do you want me to go over the? Here, I'll go over the other tweet they said. So, Brad Lambert just got brought up because Scheifele and Barron are injured. Salamonson, Reichel, Danny Zhilkin assigned to the Moose. And Sautner, Malott, Toninato have cleared waivers but remain on the roster. So because Harkins didn't clear, I'm sure one of those, Malott or Toninato, will be in the game. But here's the lineup. So this is what it was supposed to be. I crossed out Scheifele and Barron.
Yeah, by the way, when you said they were injured, people might be freaking out. Not necessarily injured per se. They're ill. They're sick. I don't know whether...
Sorry. Yeah, injured as in not healthy enough to play. But the injury is... I mean, there's a flu bug going through the team. We have clips of Rick Bowness discussing that. But here's the... Thanks for clarifying that. Here's the lines, Huss. Iafallo, Scheifele, Nemesnikov, Nino, Perfetti, Appleton, Barron, Kupari, Ford... Axel, Janssen, Fjallby, Gustafsson, Viel, Morrissey, DeMello, Dylan, Pionk, Stanley, Hainala, Hellebuck, Delia. And then so Scheifele and Barron are out. I put in Lambert and Toninato, but I mean, we'll have to.
That was what they said. They said Toninato would be that extra guy if he cleared waivers, which apparently he has. So, it'll be Brad Lambert and Dominic Toninato taking the spot of Mark Scheifele and Morgan Barron. And they're going to be going up against a Flames team that'll look pretty close to the team we see next Wednesday when the Flames host the Jets in a game that really matters. Huberdeau, Lindholm, Mangiapane, Ruzicka, Kadri, Dubé, Sharon Govich, the newcomer from Jersey, new captain, Backlund, Coronado, Coleman, Schwint, Hunt, and then back on the blue line, Mackenzie Weegar and Rasmus Anderson, Noah Hannafin, and Chris Tanev, Zadorov and Osterley, their top 6, and DeSimeone and Solovyov. I'm not sure if I got that right for the final one. And then Markstrom is going to be getting the start tonight. So, I mean, back to Hainala for a minute, and Stanley as well for that matter. I'd say it's probably their best opportunity going up against, real legit NHL competition, pretty much top to bottom of the roster. And you know what? You move up from the quality of players you play throughout the preseason. So as Rick Bowness said, and we'll get to this in a minute, this is definitely a big chance for both of those players to prove that, they are deserving of a piece of the opening day roster for the Winnipeg Jets. But the story, as we kind of get to this, Remo, and this team, and it started with Colby Barlow. And listen, I don't know whether it's just the fact that we're coming out of the bizarre era of the pandemic where, we kind of treat people getting sick a little differently. And frankly, we've seen people getting sick spread like wildfire, maybe more in the past, especially when dealing with COVID. I'm not suggesting it is COVID, but I don't even know if we test for that anymore. People are just getting sick. It started with Colby Barlow, but a number of players right now dealing with just what they're referring to as a flu bug. But it's not coming at an ideal time because you would like to use this last week of the preseason to pretty much set your roster and get a team ready to go that won't be doing a lot of things for the first time on the 11th of October when the games start to count.
Yeah, it's, the preseason's interesting. Like, you don't want guys to get hurt, but you also want them to get some reps as a group. They're trying to test new lines. You have some new players here. You'd like them, play so you can get off to a good start. You don't want to be playing catch up on game one. But we've seen in the NFL, Huss, like, teams don't really take the preseason seriously in the NFL. A lot of guys don't play, and I wonder if in hockey it's going to be a similar thing soon, like where, you kind of you take a couple strides, get used to it. I mean, we were at the game. It's nowhere near NHL speed preseason. And like, is guys not playing preseason like the worst thing ever? I don't think so. But I think for this team that has, new line combinations they wanted to try, doesn't help.
What do we know? What do we know about Ehlers, Perfetti, and Nito Niederreiter right now?
You don't know anything.
Nothing. We haven't seen them play together yet. And as they say, it's very unfortunate. And let's get to the Ehlers situation as well. Well, first we'll hear from Rick Bowness. Let's get these clips ready to go. Okay. And we'll talk to what the team's dealing with, but also specifically Nikolaj Ehlers' situation, which continues to drag on and probably frustrates him, probably frustrates the coaching staff, and I would imagine frustrating a few of you listening and watching right now. Started off with this flu bug going through the team, which is now got Mark Scheifele and Morgan Barron, who were scheduled to play in Calgary tonight, but will not be part of the roster. Here's what Bones has to say about that.
So there's a bug going through our team. No question. Mark, we allowed to leave the guys. So he wasn't feeling well yesterday, and he worked his way through practice, but he's not feeling well, so we sent him home. Morgan Barron is not feeling well either, so he was supposed to play tonight. He's not going to play. We don't want to put him on the plane with everybody. Yeah. So you see Gabe out there and Casey, they're feeling a little bit better today, so they're back on the ice. Nick took the day off because he's still not feeling 100%, so there we are. And we don't know what we're going to look like when we get off that plane today. So we're bringing an extra forward and an extra defenseman because this thing seems to pop up pretty quickly, and we might get off that plane and have a few more guys under the weather. So.
All right, so there's Rick Bowness on what they're dealing with. And, he just actually expanded a little bit more on dealing with half the team being under the weather, it seems, right now.
We look at it as there's absolutely nothing we can do, totally out of our control, and our job is to find solutions, not sort of excuses. So we'll do. We're going to do what we can. The guys some guys are going to get another game that weren't supposed to get another game. They're going to play tonight, but that's the reality of the situation we're in, and we're going to make the best of it.
All right, so Rick Bowness on the current health of the club. Now, as we mentioned, Nikolaj Ehlers does not seem to be ready to play tonight. He's apparently doubtful to play in the game on Thursday, which I would say is doubly concerning considering we're just 3 days out. But Bones was asked about Perfetti and Ehlers in particular, trying to get and develop chemistry while not playing any preseason games together.
That's all we have. That's all we have, right? That's all the time they have together is in practice. So we always try to set up as many game situations as we can in our practices, especially during training camp. And they're going to have to make the best of it. But the onus is on everyone to come to the rink ready to work and ready to get prepared for the season. There's a little bit more onus now on Nick because he's missed most of training camp, hasn't played any games, doesn't look like he's going to be able to play on Thursday. So the practice time now is invaluable.
All right, so there's Bones breaking down, certainly the challenges for those players. But that bit at the end, to me, Reem, was by far the most concerning, that they're already essentially ruling him out right now for Thursday's game. So if they're ruling him out for Thursday's game, how sure can we be that it'll be ready to go for next Wednesday in Calgary?
I'm trying to stay positive about this, Hustler. Like you say, I see Styles, T, and Chad just about the flu going around. He says, get it out of the system before the season starts. And I mean, I don't know what's going to happen with Nikolaj Ehlers. You hope that with this, what was the first day of camp? Last Thursday, and what is it, like 3 weeks here in between the day one? I don't know. I feel like we've kind of been doing this before, waiting for him to return, which sucks because he only played you're all excited. Okay, he's gonna be healthy. 17 minutes into camp, but I don't know. I mean, I guess we can't be sure, but you hope that he can play. I don't know what answer I can really give.
Yeah, listen, if he's ready to go for next Wednesday and things go well, it'll be a big who cares. But when you consider some of there's been a Murphy's Law vibe to Ehlers at times over the last couple of years. He's so damn good when he's in the lineup and able to play. They absolutely need him to really be the offensive catalyst on that line. And we haven't seen him yet so far. So basically, it's fingers crossed that Nikolaj Ehlers will be able to go. Mike McIntyre and John Liu kind of press Bones a little bit for updates on what's going on with Ehlers.
But would you consider, did he have a setback, or is this just kind of...
We're very, very cautious with it, but if he shows up and he still feels it, then we got to get this thing fixed. So one way or the other, if it's more time off, then it's more time off.
Rick, with Nick questionable for Thursday as well, is he going to see additional, specialists or any other medical personnel to try to get out more of him?
Yeah, well, they're doing everything they can with him. He's had some every doctor look at him, so they feel they're on top of it, and they'll just take the procedures they need to get this thing healed a little quicker.
Well, it sounds like it's all hands on deck in the Jets medical department for Nikolaj Ehlers. And listen, I don't really know much about the neck spasms or exactly what is bothering him. I can tell it is, certainly when we heard from Nikolaj Ehlers last week, it was, he was sick and tired of dealing with it and probably sick of talking about it. But then you see Bones, he's putting on a brave face. You can only do what you have control under. But man, that is not the way the Winnipeg Jets wanted to be going into training camp or going into the regular season, with a big question mark beside one of their most important offensive players, playing with a brand new center who's moving into that role for the first time.
No, and you definitely not. You want him to be healthy. They need him to score goals. We've talked a lot last season, their record when they were scoring, two goals in a game. They usually won, but they just had trouble getting to the number 2. And when they did, weren't able to get there, they would lose. So, you need that guy. He's expecting him to take a bigger role. Now that Blake Wheeler's gone, maybe get some power play one time. And he hasn't been able to practice. And I agree. Hopefully, he plays game 1. And all this speculation, all this talk about...
Scores a goal, we'll laugh. Remember how nervous and concerned everyone was a week ago when Ehlers couldn't play in the preseason? Hopefully that's what we're saying.
So I'm just trying to... that's why I'm kind of just trying to stay positive here. Because saying, hey, you know what? It's preseason. No one in the NFL plays in the preseason. Why? We're talking about preseason here, Huss. Not the regular season, preseason. So... you just hope that if you're going to get hurt, this is a good time to get all this stuff out, and you hope that he's healthy. And that's all you can say. That's all we can. Hopefully sounds like they're dealing with it. And if he is injured, I don't know. They definitely have a problem. They definitely miss his scoring in the lineup. So we'll see.
I was about to say, I can always throw Harkins into that spot. He's been on fire in the preseason. Oh, wait a second. No, he's on the Pittsburgh Penguins. If you're tuning in a little bit late, right off the top of the show, we learned that Jansen Harkins claimed by the Pittsburgh Penguins. So he'll get an opportunity to play in the NHL again. The spot wasn't for him here in Winnipeg. Kyle Dubas giving Hark an opportunity with Pittsburgh to begin the season. One more clip here. We just talked about Perfetti, being in at center, not able to play as of yet with Nikolaj Ehlers, although he has played extensively with Nino Niederreiter. Bones talked a little bit more about Cole Perfetti and the challenges moving forward at center.
He's handled it fine so far. Tonight will be the real test. So regardless, tonight we're going to see a National Hockey League lineup. So tonight in Calgary is going to be the true test, and this is what we want. We want him up against really good National Hockey League lineups, and he's going to get it tonight, and he'll get it again on Thursday. So then he'll have a better feel, and we'll have a better feel of where we are with that.
All right, so there's Bones on, Cole Perfetti playing it. And again, this is like we were talking about for Ville Heinola and for Logan Stanley. These are live bullets tonight for the most part. This is an NHL team they're going to be facing pretty much top to bottom. So we'll see what happens. Unfortunately, we won't see what happens with Ehlers as part of that group. Number 7 here, Reem, Perfetti spoke as well today and talked about the challenges of finding chemistry with Ehlers and getting off on the right foot while not having any time to play games in the preseason so far.
It's been tough, obviously, with his injury there. it's kind of frustrating for him, I think. Like, he feels good, but, I don't really know. Like, he's on the ice with us and stuff like that, but just being extra cautious, I think. So it sucks, obviously, not being able to, use these last couple of weeks and, a bunch of games to get used to playing with one another. But, I don't think we're, as much as it sucks, I don't think everyone's too worried because of his skill, because of his, the way what he brings to the game and what, he's going to bring to our line. I think, we're going to be all right. He's going to bring in that element of speed and playmaking and skill. So, it sucks obviously not being able to build a little bit of chemistry, but hopefully we play together on Thursday and then still have whatever it is a week before camp or before the first game to keep building in practice and stuff like that. But it's been tough, but hopefully everything just goes all right with him.
All right. Listen, it was a great answer from Cole. He's certainly getting a lot more comfortable in front of the media right now. And his patented style of wearing the hat, so the front of his hair looks amazing, inside the backwards hat is definitely on point. But I do sort of feel for him. I mean, there's a lot riding on his performance, Remis, the performance of that line, and did speak to the difficulties and what can you do, but of not having your line mate there to to play and get a little familiar with each other in the new positions heading into the start of the regular season. That's
a good point, Huss. I mean, a lot riding on him moving to center. He has played center, for before being drafted, and he's kind of been playing wing. I mean, he had a great season last year. Has 30 points in 51 games. He was among the leaders for rookies for points. He gets hurt, he missed the game, and now you get tapped on this big role for second line center. The question that we've been talking about all summer, and it finally revealed, and he's going to be playing with Nikolaj Ehlers. Well, they can't even practice now. So, I mean, how many minutes realistically would they be playing together in preseason? Like, if they played 2 games, like 30 minutes at 5-on-5?
Yeah, something like that.
Maybe. So I don't think.
But add in the practice time, too. I mean, it's not like he's been able to be in there and practice. I mean, this is essentially going to be going in cold. But again, like Bones said, I mean, you can feel a little bit of exasperation in his voice. It is what it is. We'll talk about it with Hammer, who is on deck to join us. We'll also get into the Bombers situation. Huge week for the blue and gold, coming off that win against Toronto, a matchup that is expected to determine where the West Final will take place against the BC Lions coming up on Friday. Just before we bring Jeff in, got to give a big shout out to our friends at Modern Man Barbershops, now with 8 locations in Winnipeg, including the newest locations on either Pembina Highway or on the east side of the city over on Plessis Road. Modern Man Barbershops offer a variety of grooming services, including haircuts, beard shaping, shaves, color services, and more. You're going to have to get in this week. Book your look and make an appointment via modernmanbarber.com. And you can give them a follow on Instagram as well over at Modern Man Barbershops. Well, another absolutely glorious weekend. I mean, Friday night at the stadium was ridiculous. Yesterday, Saturday, absolutely gorgeous. And I did see a few people out in the pool on the weekend. Now, pool time pretty much done for the year, I would say. But if you are thinking about a pool for next year, you can take the plunge with the experts over at Aquatech. What you might not know is that Aquatech also is the masters of whole home renovations. With thousands of renos as their foundation, Aquatech can upgrade any space in your home. So if you're ready to enhance your kitchen, bathroom, or even add a man cave to your home, visit aqua-tech.ca to learn more about their whole home renovations, including financing options. And yeah, it was another beautiful Manitoba weekend. And of course, Manitoba Battery's been powering us through the fun part of the year with batteries for boats and lawn tractors and campers and ATVs and more. Well, you know what's coming now, folks. That is the winter, and make sure you are ready for winter with a juiced up battery. Of course, Manitoba Battery can test your battery and let you know where you're at with that. And if you do need one, Manitoba Battery is your local option for the best prices in town and the best service in town as well. Not only will you get the best price on whatever battery you're getting, and that is a guarantee from Donnie and the gang, they'll also deliver it to you anywhere inside the perimeter, absolutely free for any purchase over $60. It's that easy. Find out more and order online at manitobabattery.com. You can give them a call at 783-8787 or pop by and see them over on Logan Avenue. And hey, shout out to our friends at Canadian Club. I was not off base with my prediction that they better have a lot of CC for that game on Friday night. What a crowd at IG Field. The Rum Hut was rocking till well after the game, and a lot of people enjoying the CC and ginger ale premixed cocktails in cans. Of course, you can get the full selection of Canadian Club products, the official spirit of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, at your local Manitoba liquor marts. And keep your eyes out for CC and ginger in cans at your local beer store as well. All right, let's get the Hammer in here for a little Monday Hammer time. What's up? How was your weekend?
I thought you were leading into my intro based on all that beautiful weather, and then we're gonna follow up with how my wonderful weathered weekend went. But then it was a one of those smooth transitions into an ad read. So it was just those are, I don't know if you're practicing those in the mirror, Huss, or if those are just coming out.
It's a gift.
Come out naturally.
It's a gift.
Yeah, it's a gift. You certainly can't teach that. But yeah, what a weekend! What an awesome weekend. I kept thinking when I'm going to put my bike away. It looks like probably next weekend, but certainly took advantage of that this weekend. What a great weekend of sports. I did spend most of the day inside yesterday, as those who watch NFL do, so I didn't take full advantage of that weather, but certainly was enjoying it through Friday and Saturday, that's for sure. Overall, just a great weekend. What's
the garage sale scene like in early October? Is that pretty much done, or is there still a great deal or find still on the streets if you look hard enough?
Free weekend usually marks an end to the season, but there are some hardcore sailors out there. There's some hardcores that put on sales out there that once, they're looking at the weather 2 weeks in advance. And if we're looking at especially double-digit positive numbers, they're going to be the waters are going to be rolling. So certainly garage sales are still out, but after the September long weekend, usually, or the weekend after that, it kind of tapers down to only a few. So it's those ones that you see out on the waters every weekend. You'll see the same people out there. Usually the casual sailors, if you will, have packed it already in after August. But yeah, we welcome garage sales in October if the weather allows for it.
No doubt about it. Listen, I want to get to the Bombers from Friday night, and as importantly, a look ahead to this week. But let's quickly start off with the Jets. And we were just playing some of these comments from Rick Bowness about the availability of Nikolaj Ehlers. And I have to admit, Jeff, that this is something, listen, I know different teams handle injuries and information differently. At the start, he was out there. Then it was 17 minutes. He was off. He missed a few practices. He was back in a non-contact jersey. On the weekend or heading into the weekend, everything seemed fine. And now he's not playing tonight, has basically been ruled out already for Thursday. I mean, what do you make of this? And maybe more importantly, how much of a setback is this for a team that put so much importance on Nikolaj Ehlers? And as we just talked about, playing with a new center in a new position, not really the ideal way to get ready for prime time next Wednesday in Calgary.
Well, isn't it starting to feel a lot like the start of the 2022-23 season, right? When it looked like Nikolaj Ehlers was okay at the beginning, and then I don't know if it was misdiagnosed or just not handled accordingly or properly, or they were still trying to rule things out, but then he was all of a sudden out and didn't come back for quite some time with the hernia. So to me, it's I think of in these situations, particularly in this situation, I kind of feel bad for Nikolaj Ehlers just because this is a guy he wears his heart on his sleeve. He's a guy who's not afraid to go into the corners. So you can't, not that you necessarily go towards whether it's a toughness issue with injuries, but there are injuries out there that some players are willing to play through. Other players aren't. I don't put him in a category as a guy that's, isn't willing to play through pain or isn't willing to go through, it needs to be necessarily 100%. I just see this as bad luck. And I mean, this is a time of the season, particularly this time of the season with preseason. And yes, these are important weeks, of course, to find chemistry with new line mates, to just get ready for the season, dust off some of that rust from a long off season and essentially, to be cliche, hit the ground running for when things really matter. But that's kind of the point here, is that things don't really matter, until that first regular season game against Calgary. And with a player like Nikolaj Ehlers, to what you were saying, Huss, I mean, he is going to be such a big piece of the puzzle. He has been such a big piece of the puzzle. And I'd add even more, with the uncertainty maybe around Mark Scheifele and his future, obviously with Pierre-Luc Dubois and his offense going out the door, he was going to be relied on even more, and particularly on special teams as well. So this isn't good news for the Jets. It isn't good news for Nikolaj Ehlers, but I still very much take the wait and see approach. I don't think it's one of those things that's necessarily going to be going to keep him out for a lengthy amount of time. And you still do feel like, especially out of some of the interviews, they're not all good news, obviously, but you feel, and mostly bad news, but you do get the sense that they're being precautionary and making sure that they're not pushing it for these games just to get him into a preseason game. The last thing you'd want is for him to re-injure himself or make the injury worse. So I still do very much take a wait and see approach with this, but just with everything we've seen with Nikolaj Ehlers over the past few seasons, and specifically last season, this isn't good news for the start of a new campaign for him.
Well, for sure. And I mean, he's going to be so linked to Cole Perfetti right now, who's had his fair share of injury issues in the past. But, with the exception of that cheap shot hit that knocked him out of that Calgary game and gave him a one-day reprieve from training camp, he has been there. And, it's going to be a big adjustment, a big challenge for Cole. And, I wonder maybe if this gives him more rope at the beginning of the season. The bottom line is, for Rick Bowness, he wants this team to be ready to go and playing to their potential right out of the gate. He doesn't want this to be glorified preseason where you're just getting to know your line mates. And not an easy spot for Cole to be in, because as I just mentioned with Michael, I mean, there's a lot riding on Cole Perfetti. I mean, he is unbelievably important. They need that line to, to be productive and to, achieve what they think that they're capable of right now. And as we've been kind of talking about, not the greatest way to build chemistry and confidence in a group if they can't get into any game action.
Well, to your point, it would be curious to know just how much of Nikolaj Ehlers' availability on that wing plays into whether, the confidence that Rick Bowness has of Cole Perfetti playing down the middle, because we know that there's always the potential for a Cole Perfetti to pop up to that top line, drop a Gabriel, Balharry down to the second line potentially. You have Nemestikov, who's also played second line center for this team in the past. I mean, there are some options, but Cole Perfetti and taking that next step as a centerman, like, the time is now, right? I mean, this is, he's gone through obviously some seasons filled with injuries. He comes back, has a great off season, feeling stronger. He had that, I guess you can call it a minor step back with the cheap shot in preseason. But it's good news that he's healthy. But is that confidence level that I mentioned with Bowness, is that, where is that if he doesn't have, a driver, a puck carrier like a, Nikolaj Ehlers, who can gain the offensive zone, as good as anybody in the NHL, and how much that factors into again, that confidence he has in Cole Perfetti playing down the middle. That being said, I mean, again, it's not good. The season is coming up, fastly approaching. It's not good news that Nikolaj Ehlers is ruled out for the preseason, but the focus right now might just be to get him ready for that regular season. And I don't think he needs a lot of time with Cole Perfetti per se. I know it's a bit of a new position from him, but hockey's still very much hockey, and they can learn that on the fly. It's just the issue with Nikolaj Ehlers being in and out of the lineup, while it potentially has that ripple effect for a guy like Cole Perfetti, I think it has a ripple effect for the entire forward line, because the way it's constructed right now, you really like the top three lines and how they're the makeup of them and the potential of them to be three potentially scoring lines, or at least have that third line with Iafallo bring some offensive touch to it, especially if Adam Lowry can regain some of that touch he had in the second half of the season. And then you had a fourth line that was, a pretty good grinding line that could be relied on. I'm not saying that necessarily taking out a Nikolaj Ehlers completely throws that in flux, but it does, I think, take away from that vision that Bowness has for his game day start, and hopefully what will grow to be this team's ultimate game day roster. But again, I think it's a little premature. Obviously, it's worrisome, but that's what happens when you're talking about the player with as much influence and in that lineup into this team's success as a Nikolaj Ehlers does, for sure.
Hey, great crowd right now. We got 425 in the chat right now. We only got 85 thumbs up, folks. Let's give a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, folks, hit that subscribe button. Help us get to 10,000 before puck drop on Wednesday. It's free. It's easy. Just hit that subscribe button, and you'll be eligible to win great prizes with us on Fridays for marbles and more things for WST subscribers. I'm not sure if you caught that right at the start of the program, but just as we began at the top of the hour, word came out that the first waiver wire claim had been done, and Jansen Harkins is now going to the Pittsburgh Penguins. What do you think about the opportunity for Harkins there, and the fact that he won't be a part of the Manitoba Moose after being he was their top goal scorer in only half the games last year?
Yeah, look, I think because of Jansen Harkins and where he's been within this organization over the last couple of years, a bubble guy, and then from a bubble guy to a guy who is got some meaningful ice time a few years back, and then became a bubble guy, and then ultimately kind of fell out of favor as in that top 13 role, or particularly that 13th role for him. I think it's just the time has come, whether you want to call it overdue. I think because of that position he had within the organization, you didn't hear a lot about him. I think there's certainly some fans out there that like the energy that a Jansen Harkins brings, like what he brought maybe to the third or fourth line, and in that capacity, a little bit of scoring touch at the NHL level, but certainly an energy guy. I just don't think that there's been much written about him or talked about him, and if there had been, you'd probably know that he neither was really happy with one another, right? This is a bit of a breakup, right? This is a guy who, as soon as you get a taste of the NHL, and what Jansen Harkins has 154 games played in this league, you don't want to go back to the AHL. So I think last season was certainly a tough pill to swallow under a new head coach. Everybody showed up to camp almost under a clean slate, trying to, impress the coach. And obviously, Jansen Harkins fell outside of, Rick Bowness's vision for his team and the success of his team. So once that happened, I think Jansen Harkins, if he wasn't asking for a trade, he was definitely nudging his agent to talk to this team about getting him out of here, because at his age, you're creeping up there in your late 20s. There's only so much time left on the runway, and when you get that opportunity at the NHL level and then you slip back into the AHL, it's tough to get back up there. Dylan Sandberg said it this week. It's hard to get a job in the NHL. It's even tougher to keep one. That's cliche because it's true. And I think, with Jansen Harkins and what he was able to do with the Moose last year, particularly with his offense, I think he led the team with 25 goals and was second on the team with, I believe, just under 70 or whatever it was. And he's a point-a-game player, but I think a lot of the offense that he was earning out there, if you were to talk to the Jets brass, was probably not the way in which they want him to generate offense. So read between the lines, maybe a little bit of cheating for offense at the AHL level rather than, playing within the structure, because, he deserved a chance to come up with the way he was playing at the end of the season. And Dominique Toninato got the nod, right? Like, he earned it. So I think that probably was the, I don't know, the straw that broke the camel's back, understanding that he wasn't going to be a guy that, was going to be in this team's long-term future. And I'm sure he's smiling today, knowing that the Pittsburgh Penguins, want him and are likely to give him an opportunity to crack their roster, one that I don't think, was here in Winnipeg, given all the talent they have up front.
Well, yeah, and you know what? I'll say this about going to Pittsburgh. This is exactly the sort of opportunity I'm sure he was praying to get. You're going to a team that has some superstar players, has some massive contracts, which got even more crowded with Erik Karlsson coming in. So when you got all these guys starting with 8s and 9s and 10s in their salary, you need to have some league minimum dudes that can come in and contribute. That's just the way that the salary cap works on a team that, is so top heavy. So he's going to get a chance. And, when I think back of Harkins' time here in Winnipeg, I think about that season that he had with the Moose, started off in 1920 and was a point-a-game player. We were not talking about him at all in training camp that year as being a possibility for the Winnipeg Jets. And by the end of November, he was there and he played himself into a regular spot on the club. 2021-22, that was his year to really establish himself as an NHL regular. And, I mean, he played 77 games. He had 7 goals. He had 13 points. Never really clicked, though. I mean, that fourth line, and to your point, I mean, when he was playing in the American Hockey League, he was playing, on a top line, on power play. Very different than that role that was going to be for him in the National Hockey League. So
right.
Maybe he gets a different opportunity in Pittsburgh. Maybe the holes in that lineup provide him the chance to get up there with some guys, unlike the chances that he would have had in Winnipeg. But the bottom line is he was well down the depth chart, and that the path to being on the team got a hell of a lot more crowded for any of those guys in that situation. The minute the Jets got 3 forward pieces coming back in the trade for Pierre-Luc Dubois. Going into this game tonight, and Bones sort of talked about this. This is, a chance, and we were speaking about Perfetti, going up against, a real NHL team tonight. I mean, Calgary's pretty much dressing their roster that we'll expect to see in 9 days when these teams open the season back at the Saddledome in Calgary. I'm interested to see Ville Heinola and, of course, Logan Stanley, who may very well be playing together tonight, Jeff, on that third pairing. Ville, by all accounts, has had another really, really strong camp. Or not another, I mean, I think a strong camp. I'm not sure he really had a strong camp last year. Regardless, all of our conversations all summer long was sort of like, I mean, we pretty much know what's going to happen. There's no room for Ville. He can play with the Moose. He is waivers exempt, unlike everybody else in that situation. But it does seem, and certainly from the comments from Bones over the weekend, that Ville's played himself into an opportunity to potentially be on that team. What do you make of his spot right now? And is this lip service? I mean, trying to, say a lot of nice things for a player that probably deserves that, but it's not realistic that he'll be with the club? Or is Ville Heinola kind of seeing some of his potential shine right now and making them legitimately think that he might make this team better and he should be on the ice?
Can it be both? I mean, because I'm not, look, I mean, I think Ville Heinola is going to have to he's going to have to play like a top 4 defenseman, to be on this team. And I just don't, to be in the starting lineup, to be carried, because as you mentioned, Huss, there's a lot of things that are attached to him staying as part of that 23-man roster. Of course, he's the one guy really in the conversation that, is waivers exempt, so he can, freely go to and from the Manitoba Moose. And that leaves an already, and if he is the guy that they want to bring on the 23-man roster, that leaves an already busy blue line even busier. I mean, look at just simple math. I mean, if you want to look at, Dylan Sandberg's made his way and, solidified himself into that top 6, you look at the rest of the bodies, we all know their names. It's going to take an injury to one of those players, I imagine. Because I just don't see Rick Bowness starting camp giving Ville Heinola a thumbs up and ultimately having to most likely sit like a Nate Schmidt or I don't think Sandberg is going to get bumped for him. So it's going to be an established guy, and Nate Schmidt's name seems to be the one floating out there. He's dealing with some injuries here during camp. It comes with a nearly $6 million, a year contract. Do you want that guy sitting in the press box? I'm not 100% sure. How does that, what does that do to team morale? Like, I'm not saying that people are going to be bitter if Ville Heinola, works his way onto the lineup, but, there are certain moves you do for certain players as far as veteran status. I know fans don't like that. I don't like that. But the reality is I think that Bowness is just kind of saying nice things, and I'm not saying that he's lying or that he's misleading the media and therefore the fans with his evaluations of Ville Heinola. I think he wants it for him to continue to play with confidence, continue to be a guy that can be relied on every night. I just don't think that trust is coming in the last few games he's played. And is it enough to, want to keep him as a guy who isn't dressing every game? That's certainly what you don't want, is for him to be the 7th defenseman. And that's the dilemma that the Jets find themselves in with guys like Declan Chisholm, guys like Logan Stanley, guys like Kyle Capobianco, and now a guy like Ville Heinola, all of whom don't have right now, at least penned in a spot in the top 6. So it's great that Ville Heinola is coming along, playing well, building that, growing that confidence with his head coach. But is it going to be enough to sit another guy, like a Nate Schmidt, possibly a Dylan Samberg? Has he done enough to leapfrog those guys? Some fans might say yes, but from a team dynamic, that's going to be a tough conversation to have, especially when you're working with all these numbers. You don't want to lose. You don't want to lose a player like you lost in Johnny Kovacevic last year. So you start weighing out who you want to, if you take a Ville Heinola, you either have to trade Logan Stanley or trade a Declan Chisholm, which I don't think you're interested in doing at all. In this case, I almost feel like Declan Chisholm might be ahead of Ville Heinola as far as, where he fits in the mix here, especially because he's not waiver exempt. So it really is a weird situation for Ville Heinola. I think we've been saying that now for 2 or 3 seasons at least. Free Heinola, all those Twitter accounts, all the people who want to see this first round pick finally crack the lineup. It just seems weirdly that years later, as he's matured and continued to improve, that the situation seems even more difficult than it was a few years back.
Yeah. I do wonder, if we were just watching training camp, and I know there's a lot more that goes into that, but if we're judging based on camp and we're comparing Ville to Declan Chisholm, I actually think Ville's ahead of Declan. Just listen, I think Declan at some point so far in this preseason, again, some lineups that haven't really been, shall we say, NHL caliber, has had some, and this is a knock we've heard on Ville before. Some of the issues have been on defending. He did make some really nice plays. Certainly the Parker Ford goal in the game against Calgary was started on a great blue line turnover takeaway by Chisholm and a quick pass. Ville seems to have been a bit more steady, and maybe we're seeing that tonight with the fact that those two guys are in the lineup and Declan Chisholm is out. The thing with Chisholm is that if you take that chance at putting him on waivers, you might lose him, and this is very different than a guy like Jansen Harkins, who's been in the National Hockey League, who's been given a bunch of opportunities. Listen, I don't think this is, some people will say, oh, this is terrible asset management. Trust me, if there was a 5th or a 6th round pick out there for Jansen Harkins, the team would have taken it because he's not in their plans. Declan Chisholm very much is in their plans. Now, whether those plans include the next month, we'll find out. But that's a risky proposition. And for me, I kind of give Ville the nod, and that's why I think there is a little bit more substance to what the coaches are saying right now, even if it ends up as Ville being the odd man out to play. The one thing I don't think you want with either of those guys, Jeff, is to be on the Jets, but mired behind a healthy top 6 and not getting a chance to play and just basically being popcorn duty and bag skate guys.
That's the last thing you want, and that's part of the dilemma of having such a veteran-laden defense that the Winnipeg Jets have. This was conversation over the last couple off seasons, having to dump ever since they had the summer of Chevy in picking up, Brendan Dillon and Nate Schmidt. The two following off seasons have been trying to clear out the blue line. They're trying to figure out space for these up and coming players. Like Ville Heinola and Declan Chisholm are two guys that, for all intents and purposes, should be considered the future of the Winnipeg Jets, especially when you have expiring contracts for guys like Dillon and eventually Nate Schmidt to leave. What's the backup plan here? Are you just going to go out and find those guys again that, they're kind of on the back nine of their careers, and while they still have some value to them, that, these guys, you don't know where their ceiling is yet. That there should be an excitement from the fact that you've drafted and developed these guys as well. And so, that's why this camp has been so interesting. You have 2 players, and obviously Connor Hellebuck and Mark Scheifele have garnered a lot of attention for their expiring deals and what their futures could be. If you are making a deal with either one of those players, are you not looking at your blue line and maybe adding in one of those veteran pieces? Because right now, I don't know. If you're the Winnipeg Jets, are you all that thrilled with your blue line over the last few years? You might be happy with the veteran, the experience there, but are you not looking to maybe find out what you got in a Declan Chisholm? Because that's kind of been the hit on the Moose is, on a guy like Jansen Harkins, he's not really an example of this because he did get that 77-game season to really show, what he could do at this level. But there's been a lot of guys that have just kind of come up and not really seen a chance to crack this roster. And as much as your focus needs to be on the NHL team, what's the situation on the farm and how those players are feeling about their potential opportunities? Because if they're looking at a guy like Declan Chisholm who can't get in, a guy like Ville Heinola who was a first-round pick years back and had made the team out of camp all those years ago. I mean, again, I think it's something that maybe isn't the most pressing thing on their plate, but it's something I think they need to consider when making some of these decisions that obviously are being made and what they believe is the best team, the best chance to compete for a Stanley Cup this season.
I asked about Ville and Declan Chisholm because I don't want to say they're identical players, but they're smaller, younger, more offensive defensemen. Logan Stanley's in a very different situation, more experienced, has had far more NHL games, was in a spot to start the last year and is going the other way on the depth chart right now. Where is he at right now? And Jeff, what do you expect to happen when it pertains to Logan Stanley over the course of the next 10 days?
See, I think that's the part that if you're a Jets fan, you'd be, how can you not be frustrated with? Clearly, Logan Stanley is not in the future of this club's plans, in their future vision here. And while his name's certainly been floated out there for potential trade deals, whether it's just trying to trade him for a pick or whether he's been, tossed in as a potential sweetener on a different deal with the Winnipeg Jets. But the reality is that they don't really have a spot for him and haven't had a spot for him. And it's just like they're kind of holding this guy's career hostage a little bit, believing it's just a weird contradiction. It's like they believe he's good enough to hold on to, but not good enough to play. And it's just like, where, is it because of his size? Is it because they obviously traded up for him and to select him in the first round, that they just don't want to admit that they were wrong in their assessment? But it's almost kind of like crap or get off the pot with this guy. I mean, is he in the mix? Do you view him as a top six guy? Do you view him as a guy who can mentally handle, like Kyle Capobianco they liked him and he brought some value, but one of his biggest assets in a way was his ability to be that seventh D man and not play night in and night out, and to continue to act like a pro and not have that weigh on him. There's just some players out there that are capable of doing that. Logan Stanley, well, I'm sure, I'm not saying he's completely incapable of doing that, clearly doesn't want to do that, hence asking for a trade last season. So there's obviously not a market for him. The Jets haven't created a market for him to play him enough to really show what his value is, and yet they clearly keep him at a level that doesn't warrant a high draft pick. Because you got to think at this point they would be taking a high draft pick, whether that's a sixth rounder, seventh rounder, whatever. That obviously either hasn't been offered or hasn't been accepted. And that just puts it in a weird situation. Here, what exactly is Logan Stanley? Well, there's certainly fans out there that will be quick to tell you he's useless or that he's given his size and his ability to move his stick and whatnot, that he is an asset and his physicality is needed. Seems to be a little bit of a polarizing player in this city. The reality is the Jets have kind of already decided on him. They've decided that he's not a guy that they want to see too much about, that it's worst case scenario to get him in the lineup, and why he's still on the roster and hasn't been traded off is wild to me. And I don't have any answers for it.
Maybe there's no market.
Well, that's it. I have no answers for it, despite, other than there being absolutely zero market for him.
Like, I have no doubt that some team would take a flyer on him for nothing on waivers. And who knows? I mean, maybe over the course of this week, after this game, after the Thursday game, if the Jets look at their situation and go, we simply don't have room on this roster for Logan Stanley, even as a depth piece, because of what it will force us to do with some of these other guys. So you have to be prepared to lose him for nothing to make that pick, and then maybe you're making some phone calls, and there's a team that'll toss you a fifth or a sixth, or you've got something. I mean, I guess from a management standpoint, that would look better than just cutting him and having him leave on waivers. It's a tough pill to swallow, regardless. The fact that you traded up for him and now all these years later you're getting rid of him. I get that, but it gets to a certain point where it's clearly hurting you more than it's helping you. And while it might help out another team, I mean, you got to start thinking about the player too and his potential to move on and start a career somewhere. I mean,
It's just it's not here in Winnipeg, and it hasn't been here in Winnipeg. And I don't think there's a chance, as we talk about guys like Chisholm and Ville Heinola, Sandberg, all these guys who have leapfrogged him on the depth chart, seemingly, that, at the end of the day, if you have him as your 10th D-man, do you really think that, or 9th, 10th D-man, do you really think that your defense is so good that all of a sudden this guy is going to be some juggernaut somewhere else? Time to cut bait a little bit here and see where the chips lie.
Yeah, well, I mean, listen, the irony of it all is, when you mention 9th and 10th D-men, is that, if any contending team that's going to be making a long run in the playoffs, you actually need to have players that deep, because, I mean, in the attrition competition that is the Stanley Cup playoffs, guys go down and you need guys to step up. Like, I mean, if you're playing your 9th or 10th guys, you're probably in a real dire situation, but at the same time, you're there. But the minute guys are waivers exempt, I mean, you can't just have them hang out with the Manitoba Moose or the American Hockey League until, in case of emergency, break glass, if they're not going to clear. So, right. I mean, it is funny that the amount of conversations that we and the rest of the guys have had with us on this program about the defense grouping, and we're now into October of 2023, 9 days from the beginning of the season. And we literally have no more clarity than we did at the beginning of camp, at the end of last season. And it's going to come right down to the wire, I guess.
Yeah, there has been none. I mean, this team is, there's plenty to like about this team. I mean, the way the roster configures, especially after what seemed to be a difficult situation with Pierre-Luc Dubois and bringing back assets in the way the Jets wanted them to be brought in, guys who could play, guys who they could plug in, and that they could continue to compete for a playoff spot and therefore a Stanley Cup opportunity. But, at the end of the day, the defense has just been a real head scratcher, because there's just been the same names that have been talked about, and just seemingly just, I don't know if you even want to classify it as doghouse, but hasn't been able to find, steady work or made an impression or earn the trust of coaches. And you got to remember, we're not talking about one coach here, right? We're not talking about one talent evaluator coming in and, throughout this entire process and just maybe not being Paul Maurice's guy. We now have Paul Maurice, we have Dave Lowry, and now we have Rick Bowness, and they've all seemed to make the same assessments with the same players. So, maybe there is something that, needs to change, or there's some maturity there, whatever it might be, and whether it be in the game or the person or both. But certainly it's getting to a point now where the Logan Stanley narrative is just going to trickle off into dust until something happens, because given the options in front of him, guys that are going to be battling for a 7th spot on a 6-man lineup. The future doesn't necessarily look bright for Logan Stanley.
Yeah, no, agree with that. Comment asking what happens to Capo. I would imagine, I guess this depends on how much of an issue this groin injury is. I think he's probably going to be on waivers at some point, I would think, just because of those younger players. I mean, he was a perfect depth guy. I mean, he seemed to be able to miss a month and a half and go in and play well, and then come back in for another month, or into the press box for a month and come back. Mm-hmm. But again, and he's on a one-way deal this year. So, well,
maybe it's a conversation. Are you sure you're okay? Are you sure? Are you sure you didn't have a minor setback that might get you, 6-7 more weeks of an NHL paycheck? You sure about that? You
well,
sure
the good thing for him is he's getting the paycheck no matter what, because he is on a one-year deal.
100%. I just mean but with the one-way deal, if he does get waivers, I just mean in general, if he likes his position here. But that's the thing. Those injuries happen, and so you want depth. You clearly want depth, and I'm sure that's where the Jets are coming at with the Logan Stanley, and certainly with Kyle Capobianco, is that he was a great soldier. He was exactly the guy that they needed. He wasn't going to be going into the GM's office and asking for a change of scenery and wanting more opportunity. Appreciate everything he had. He certainly was a guy that mixed in well with the players, right? I mean, I'm not saying a depth guy or a bubble guy has the influence, if you will, to shake a team, but the better, you don't want bad vibes in a locker room. And if you have the guy who's, maybe a leader amongst the extra skaters on the team. You don't want, you want that chemistry to be good. I mean, I often liken the Jets to the Bombers, and it's not necessarily a fair comparison, but that's the beauty of the Bombers, is they've been able to get everybody on their practice roster to buy in and understand how important they are to the team. It's like I said, when the dollars are at a much higher value, and the the potential of earning is much higher. It's a lot tougher sell to have those guys who are in and out of the lineup, or guys that are the extra players, to convince them that they're as much or as important as anybody on the team. But that's ultimately the culture you need to foster, and one that hopefully under Adam Lowry's leadership can be done, because I think that's a big play to it too, is that Kyle Capobianco was a good soldier, but sometimes you're not always going to have the good soldier because you don't really want a guy in that position not to want more, not to be want to be hungry, want to get in and demand that stuff. I think the culture of your hockey team is also a big factor in those things too. So maybe there is an improvement there for the Jets too this season.
Hey, Hammer, let's get to the Bombers. Listen, they as I tweeted out afterwards, good teams win, great teams cover. Shout out to Castillo for that late field goal that put them over the top. It was a weird game. We knew it was a buzzkill when Chad Kelly wasn't going to be there. And it seemed, I don't know, my perspective in the first half was the Bombers were playing as if the Argos were resting everybody on the defensive side of the football. It certainly took them a little while to maybe get up to their level. But man, listen, Brady Oliveira just continues to write an incredible story here. What he had, almost 170 on the ground.
Yeah, career high, 169 on 25 carries.
So 169 for Brady, a defense that stepped up afterwards. But again, Dinwiddie, taking the starting quarterback out, putting their third string in later on, was quite obvious that the Argos did not care one way or the other if they won this football game. But what are the takeaways from this game for the Bombers? Or do we even need to worry about it? It was a win. That's what they needed to get. And right now, it's all about Friday night in Vancouver.
Wow, you really threw the kitchen sink at me there. You should put a timer on my answer, because I don't even know what to address first. I'll address the last part first. I think that the goal obviously was to get the 2 points, and those were the most valuable part of the game, of course, as they remain in a tight West Division race with the BC Lions, who are also at 11-4, setting up what will be a pretty intense and emotional game this week at BC Place. For my money, or anyone's for that matter, the winner of that game is probably going to lock up the West with, only a few games remain in the regular season, and the tiebreaker being up for grabs, obviously, as they both split the season series so far, 1 game apiece. But to the Toronto game, I don't know, man. What do I want to dive into next? I thought Ryan Dinwiddie's decision to put Brian Scott in the fourth quarter was absolutely ridiculous. Despite, to be fully transparent, he did say that he was planning to play Brian Scott late in the game. If people are wondering who Brian Scott is, yeah, go Google him. I couldn't even tell you what team he played for before being on the Argos. This is a guy who is a third stringer. No one really knew much about him. Certainly a guy that, look, even enough about Brian Scott. The fact that he came in for 2 series, threw 4 incomplete passes, both drives ended with 2 and outs, pretty much gave the Bombers the opportunity to get back in that game. I'm not saying Cameron Dukes necessarily would have been, would have played like Doug Flutie as he did the first 2 drives for Toronto, at least against this.
He was pretty good.
Bomber defense. He took exactly what the Bombers gave him. He looked at his one read. If it wasn't there, he abandoned it and ran with the ball and was certainly playing some audible football on the fly. But yeah, he looked really good at the beginning. Why he wouldn't be given the opportunity to, beat a team like the Bombers, in his first career start, and instead have Scott come in and ultimately, throw that momentum to the other side and give, the Bombers scored 10 points off those punts. They weren't turnovers, but they got the ball back and essentially got back into the game. And then, then he brings in Cameron Dukes again for the, after those 2 drives. And you're just wondering, why are you treating this like an absolute preseason game? That being said, that's what, the CFL is wearing this. They made their own bed. This is, the fact that the East, I would have been hard to predict. The Toronto Argonauts clinching the East with a third of the season remaining? Yes, but it wasn't impossible. We've seen how bad the East has been over the years. We've seen how good Toronto has been the last 3 seasons. Is the third straight year they've clinched the division. And the fact that they put this game after Labor Day, like deep into the season, the Grey Cup rematch is just borderline unforgivable.
Total fail.
I mean, written about that, talked about that all last week. But, you know, when you look at the actual game, I mean, yeah, the Bombers offense, I think anybody watching that, myself included, when I saw Zach Collaros march up the field on that first drive and score a touchdown with Brady Oliveira, you know, we'll get to him. I thought this was, you know, going to be a rout, and then it was far from it. I mean, they trailed at halftime, and while the defense, you know, do what they've often done this season, figure things out at halftime, allowing just 3 points or 4 points or whatever it was in the final 2 quarters. You know, they locked things down, created the turnovers that they're known to create and need to create to be effective ultimately. And then we saw the offense, you know, get close but not finish. Obviously, six field goals by Sergio Castillo. Credit to him for bouncing back after a tough miss on a 52-yarder. For him to hit that 49-yarder late in the third, and the 48er followed shortly after at the start of the fourth. I think, you know, chiseled away at the lead, and then, you know, made obviously 2 smaller kicks after that. But I just, you know, Brady Oliveira, just an absolute stud. I think, you know, when all said and done, I've written about this, we've talked about this. I think just the way he's going, the way he puts it, you know, work into his craft, his ability to play at a high level every single week, the fact that he's only 26 years old. I mean, this guy, you know, I think when all said and done, we're going to be talking about him eclipsing Andrew Harris's records. You know, obviously Andrew Harris was in the house last week. You know, he's done a lot for this organization and helped bring back that, you know, championship pedigree, you know, before leaving to Toronto last season. And then I'll just cap off on this, Huss, is like, I think the biggest takeaway for me ultimately is that if the Bombers have managed to, you know, get to a 4th straight Grey Cup, and assuming that the Toronto Argonauts are there to meet them there for a 2nd straight year, I think the talk going into that game is going to be much different than it was in 2022, where, you know, everyone pretty much crowned the Bombers as the champions, that, you know, Toronto was too dysfunctional. They had a young coach, you know, they were, you know, their quarterback wasn't as good as Zach Collaros. All those narratives that were heading into that week, I don't think those are going to be quite the same in Hamilton this year for the Grey Cup, because I think Toronto proved, despite losing that game, that they are the best team in the CFL and that they can compete with anybody, regardless of what their roster looks like.
Yeah, I mean, listen, they're good. I don't know. I mean, they've been great all season long. They lost to Calgary. Vernon Adams threw 6 picks against them. And listen, defense is a big part of that as well. But as I said, there's only one way to find out, and that's in November at Tim Hortons Field. And hopefully we will get that. Speaking of November at Tim Hortons Field, this one's for the chat. Why not question of the day for Not Autocorp over at Waverly and McGillivray? What's everyone feeling about Green Day as the CFL halftime show for the Grey Cup? I mean, it's almost like a national rite of passage for everyone to lose their mind online when the CFL announces, or in some cases hasn't announced in the past, their halftime show. What does everybody think? Let us know in the chat. Full disclosure, I could care less who the halftime show is pretty much every single year. I'm usually busy at halftime.
Have you watched the halftime show in the last decade?
Let me see. I definitely watched it when Shania was on.
Okay, so
that was sort of noteworthy. Mm-hmm. What was the one where? Was it Headley or something? What was the one where they had the motorcycles like jumping over? Like, I don't even remember who the artist was. I remember the dirt bikes that were
don't quiz me on. I remember Keith Urban being one in Calgary in 2019.
You know why I remember Keith Urban? Not as much Keith Urban's performance
as you did his in-game interview.
Yeah, Glenn Suter losing his mind and being. To be honest, I haven't seen an on-air TV person as aroused as Glenn Suter until last night, listening to Chris Collinsworth gush over Zach Wilson turning into a legit NFL quarterback for half a game last night.
Man. I thought it was like
he was in love.
He was in love. Like some of those passes, like you were talking to you're talking to an up-and-coming star here. It was just like him wanting Zach Wilson to be the starting quarterback for the, like almost like we were witnessing history last night. But yeah, certainly the Keith Urban and Suits. Yeah, Suits got a little bit excited in that interview. And I'm not a huge fan of in-game interviews as they are, and I'm even more so when it's the championship game and, every play ultimately matters. Bring those guys on when it's a drubbing and it's the fourth quarter and you want to get some, attention towards a good cause and just give a break to the announcers. Seems like Grey Cup isn't the time or place to be going into lengthy interviews during the game.
No doubt. Quickly, when we're going to be talking a lot about Friday's game all week long, still have not seen a spread for this one, and I'm interested as to how close this is to a pick'em. Or the Bombers, I think the Bombers might be a slight favorite, maybe, but
really this week.
Well, they have sort of been up and down. I mean, they're 2-2 in their last 4. Mm-hmm. The home games, they up until Friday, they were routinely putting up 50 up. To me, just the Bombers have been so good at coming up big in the big moments, and they certainly have a great history of winning in BC Place as well. But regardless of what the odds makers think, I mean, what do you just make of the challenge for the Bombers? Because this, all season long, we thought, after they lost and got waxed by BC early on and then got back at them, putting up the 50 burger or whatever it was here in Winnipeg, we knew that this game would likely have the potential to determine the West. It certainly seems like that is the case. And I mean, Jeff, we know how important it is for Winnipeg to try to secure home field. It's a hell of a lot different beating the Bombers at IG Field in June or early July than it is in late November.
Yeah, there's no doubt that that this game is going to feel and look probably end like a playoff game, right? Both of these teams understand the magnitude of this game. They both understand how important it is to clinching the West. They both understand the importance of clinching the West. I mean, is there another professional sports league where playoff positioning matters more than in the CFL? I mean, you win that division, you win that game this Friday, and you're ultimately setting yourself up for one home win, likely against the same opponent, from punching your ticket into the championship. And so, yeah, both teams I imagine are going to be dialed in. But to kind of your point, Huss, like, I think both the Lions and the Bombers have not played their best over the last month. Both have records that I don't think they're ultimately thrilled with, have put together games that they're ultimately happy with, and that you could point to one team and be like, oh yeah, this club's really rolling. They got these pieces, they got those pieces, yada, yada. What I'm super curious about, and what I think is potentially the X factor in this game, because it's been an issue for the Bombers for the last 5-6 weeks or whatever long it's been, has been whether or not Janarian Grant's going to come back. I mean, is this the game that the Bombers are waiting for? I mean, we've seen him sprinting in the end zone. We've seen him, doing footwork exercises. I mean, this guy doesn't need to have full-on practices to be a punt returner. But I wonder if this is not the week that we see Janarian Grant in pads, because this is a massive, massive game for the Bombers. They know it for all the reasons I mentioned. They know, they've witnessed it for the last 2 seasons, the importance of finishing atop the West. And it allows them to work and tweak their roster for whatever many games will be remaining. In this case, probably 2 games remaining or whatever. It allows them to figure out how they want to run their health and just their overall lineup heading into the playoffs. Gives you that freedom, a freedom that only the Toronto Argonauts have right now. And so I think this is, it's just at the same time, it's so hard to know which team's going to show up. And are we going to get the Vernon Adams that is, gunslinging, throws 6 touchdowns a game, and it seems to be finding all of his weapons on offense, and BC has quite a bit. Is it going to be the guy who's, he's throwing for 350 yards, 400 yards, but he's turning the ball over 5 or 6 times and the Lions are losing by 10. I think you could apply the same logic to the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. It's going to be a game that, they come out and they dominate like we've seen them so many times at home, or is this one where they're going to let teams hang around? It's going to be a nail biter the whole game, and field position is going to be another, top of mind, part of the game, and ultimately maybe the downfall for the Bombers. I think these two teams, the fact that we don't quite know what we can't quite predict a spread, and I wouldn't even try to right now. I think either team could be viewed as an underdog or a favorite in this one. Just the fact that you look at the roster and where their excellence is, both have good stingy defenses, both have prolific offenses when they're firing on all cylinders. How many more cliches can I add to that sentence? And then again, the special teams, two units that are okay, but without a guy like Janarian Grant, I think the Bombers might be falling or second out of the race of two in that one.
It would be huge if Janarian Grant all of a sudden returns to practice this week and is good to go on Friday. We won't hold our breath, though, considering how long that's gone. To me, this is going to come down to the performance of the Bomber defense. I mean, I have no doubt that the Bombers are going to get theirs on offense. I mean, the way Brady Oliveira is running the football right now, Zach Caleros will be there in the big game. You got Schoen, Kenny Lawler's due, certainly after a pretty quiet game on Friday. So I think they'll be there. To me, this is going to come down to the Winnipeg Blue Bomber defense and the performance that they're able to put up against VA and that BC Lions attack. It should be an awesome one. By the way, nothing gets the chat going like a little talk about the CFL halftime show. Just before we go, what do you think? I can imagine a young Jeff Hamilton listening to the Dookie album a million times over and over in the midst of hell raising the mean streets of sunny St. James back in the day.
Yeah, it might have been the first cassette or radio to cassette tape album I put together, where I recorded off the radio or just, whatever, or the first band that I got their album and started to memorize their words. I think, it's interesting, right? Because there are people out there that have, crapped on Green Day as the halftime show artists. And then there's people who, I think there's way more people than I've seen in the past who have suggested they nailed it.
Yeah, there's way more positive reaction.
Way more positive. There's always going to be those.
It's impossible to have everyone be like,
there's
100%.
going to be people who, exactly. The jokes I could see are already coming about just but Green Day's a world-renowned band. They're super popular and have maintained their popularity through the decades. And while, I almost feel like it's the perfect get for the CFL because it brings in a bit of a younger fan base because of Green Day's newer stuff, and then obviously touches the heartstrings of a lot of older fans. I'm in my mid to late 30s. There's people who are 10 years older than me and more that, enjoyed Green Day and their, whatever their heyday, if you will. But I think they nailed it. And it's going to be one where everyone's going to know the songs. I think it's going to be, certainly just a flashback for a lot of people. And yeah, I commend the CFL, and I commend the CFL for announcing it ahead of time and not having to wait and piss people off with what happened last season, obviously. In Saskatchewan.
I see Bruce, issue boy Bruce doing the old, we knew them back when they were just small before they got big. Dookie was a radio pop album. All the skaters and punks were over it by then. That might be a little revisionist history, issue boy. I will say this. You like the Green Day before they were cool kind of situation?
Well,
you know what? I mean, Kerplunk was pretty popular. And I mean, there were some people that knew. I have an incredible story about the Green Day show and meeting them in 1994 at the Rendezvous 4-5 weeks before the Woodstock concert, where they had the big mud fight that really took them to a whole new stratosphere. Unfortunately, I can't tell the story on the show. So
yeah, of course not. Yeah,
maybe sometime you can ask me about this.
Not even 2 seconds of it. You couldn't even get 15 seconds into the story. But
it was a different time. It was a different time back then, Jeff. But it was lots of fun. They put on a great show.
Simpler time, I believe they say, Huss.
Yeah, absolutely. I imagine you're going to be all over Bombers, getting ready for this huge tilt on Friday. Are you out in Vancouver as well?
No, we're not making the trip out there. This was our I'll save my judgment on the decision, but it was one of those. Okay, we usually skip one of the games, usually a BC game at 9 p.m. It doesn't hit our paper deadline, but I will be fully covering it from home. It's the one game we're not going to be at, which is unfortunate given the stakes of it. But at the same time, I'll be all over with my opinions and talking to people about it and all those other things. So hopefully the coverage will be comparable.
Love it, dude. We'll look forward to everything leading up to this big one in the Free Press all week long. Take it easy, and we'll see you soon.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on. And again, shout out to the commenters. You guys know you make the show. So we'll see you again next week.
Good crew in here. Good crew. 430
Great
plus
crew
in the chat right now. Let's hit that thumbs up, everyone. And anyone in the chat that has not already hit the subscribe button, help the boys out. We're just over 50 away from 10,000. We got to get to it for next week. So please hit that subscribe button. And it's completely free. And you'll have all the latest Winnipeg Sports Talk content in your YouTube lined up if you're not able to join us live. And tell a friend about WST. Thank you, everybody. All right, we're going to get ready for Moose Camp from the Iceplex in just a minute. But I do want to shout out our friends at Vita Health Fresh Market. If you're looking for great prices on natural and organic supplements, beauty products, and groceries, stop by one of 6 Vita Health Fresh Market stores or online at myvita.ca with local delivery options. And I know there's so many gearing up now that we're back to school. You need to keep that energy up with Health First B12 Supreme. B12 is involved in so many functions of our bodies, like metabolizing carbs, fats, and proteins, which are converted into energy. Health First B12 Supreme is on sale all month at Vita Health. Vita Health Fresh Market, empowering people to lead healthy lives. 6 Winnipeg locations, again, online at myvita.ca. Well, it's been an amazing summer. And that overhead garage door of yours has had plenty of ups and downs, getting you and the fam to all the fun that you've had over the course of the last few months. But it's about to work a whole lot harder because winter puts much more stress on an overhead garage door. The right time to prevent downtime this winter is now. Call the experts at Wallace & Wallace to book your inspection and maintenance service. Call today for residential and commercial overhead door sales and service. There's only one name or two you need to know, and that is Wallace & Wallace. Well, hard to believe we're into October right now, folks, and it's not too long before holidays are going to be just around the corner. Listen, if you're looking in the closet and realize that you need to up your menswear game, get on down to F Apparel and do it now. Custom suits beginning at $400, along with chinos, golf pants, custom shirts, both tucked and untucked styles, and an incredible selection of menswear accessories. And don't forget, 15% discount for wedding parties when the wedding party gets their suits at F Apparel as well. Pop by and see them, 190 Smith Street downtown. You can also make an appointment or find out more online at That's EPHapparel.com. And hey, shout out to Nick and Nikki DQ. More blizzard weather on the weekend. How nice was the end of September? Hopefully we can hang on a little bit more. But you know the sweet tooth of Manitobans is there 12 months a year, and Nick and Nikki DQ is there for you as well. 4 locations: DQ Northgate, DQ Polo Park, DQ St. Anne's, and the DQ in Niverville. And don't forget, for if you're out in Niverville, Nick and Nikki just opened up the Pita Pit there as well. Healthy, delicious, fast and fresh, and great catering as well. You can find out more about catering at Pita Pit Niverville on X, formerly known as Twitter. Let's head up to the Iceplex right now, and it's the return of the Fink as Manitoba Moose training camp gets underway. Daniel, great to see you. How was your summer, and are you ready to get back to work?
Us, it's great to be back. Summer was good, relaxing, sit by the pool a little bit, get out to Calgary to see the family at the tail end there. Just everything you could want in a nice, relaxing summer to recharge for what should be an exciting hockey season. And yeah, it was great to see the Moose back on the ice here today.
There's been so much excitement about this upcoming Moose season with these talented young players and high draft picks that are going to be coming in. Although the squad took a little bit of a hit today when we learned that Jansen Harkins, who led the team in goals last year with 25 and only 44 games, was claimed off waivers by the Pittsburgh Penguins. Definitely a loss to the Moose, but I'd imagine there's some people in the organization happy for Jansen that he's going to get an opportunity to play in the National Hockey League in a situation that, wasn't afforded him and just simply wasn't there for him here in Winnipeg with the big club.
Yeah, it's always a bittersweet day when a player is claimed on waivers. Like you said, the competitive side of you that wants the Moose to have the best possible players wishes you had that 25-goal, 50-point player in the lineup, one of the elite players in the American Hockey League when Jansen Harkins is at that level. But personally, you're excited for those players to get that opportunity. And for Harkins, it's a pretty great opportunity to go to Pittsburgh and show what he can do. And you look forward to seeing him stick at the NHL level. It happened for Johnny Kovacevic and Mikey Esimont last year. So you hope to see something similar from Jansen.
Now, Dan, listen, the Moose coaching staff's been very involved in training camp. We've seen Mark Morrison out there. Bomber has been very involved as well. But now we're starting to see cuts from the Jets, going to the Moose, a number of players clearing waivers today. Fill us in on how things are changing for Morrison, for Baumgartner, and the way camp is shaping up now, as well as a number of players getting some PTOs to show that maybe they could help this team win some hockey games next year.
Yeah, the beginning of camp's always an interesting time. I mean, you have folks making schedules based on guesswork, really. You're trying to see, okay, well, we might be getting these guys back. These guys might hit waivers. And sure enough, a group of players hits waivers. You expect, okay, well, we'll probably have them ready to go for tomorrow. And then, lo and behold, Jets going through kind of a bit of a bug and some injuries right now. So a few of them end up staying a little longer, which is also a good thing for those guys to get more opportunity with the big clubs. So that trickles down, things change with the club, and you look at some different schedules over the next few days, and we'll have to wait and see how everything plays out. But like you mentioned, a bunch of tryouts, as there always are this time of year, of course, with the Moose having an ECHL affiliate this season. Few guys coming in from the Norfolk Admirals and some new faces that we haven't seen before, and some local content as well on those tryouts. Guys like Stelio Mateos, who's obviously a Winnipeg kid, former first overall pick in the WHL. Dante Januzzi, who was with the club last season as a tryout after his season with the Portland Winterhawks. You got Colt Conrad out of Brandon, as well as Keaton Jameson. So a couple of local products in with those tryouts, a few more guys on the list as well. But then you have some of your AHL contracts, another local kid, or at least Manitoba kid, in Dawson Barteau and Mark Lewinsky. So some of these names aren't as familiar. Carson Golder just signed a 2-year contract with the Moose today. But this is their opportunity. And in talking to Craig Heisinger and Mark Morrison, point that they've made to some of the guys is there isn't a lot of time. It's just the nature of the beast. Camp for the Moose is not it's not a long sprint here. It's really just something that comes and goes very quickly. So every player needs to have on their mind, what are they doing to stand out every time they're on the ice, whether it's in practice or in the couple of exhibition games the Moose have against the U of M Bisons, or even the inter-squad game coming up as well.
Yeah, you just quickly on that. I remember back in the 1.0 era, there was often an exhibition game between the Bisons and sort of the rookies, if you will, from the big club. I love the fact, and listen, I think budgets, there's a lot of teams that, if you have to have big time travel, there's not a lot of exhibition. Frankly, you're getting players so late. There is an element of just boom, get right to it, and you're starting the season. But 2 exhibition games, the 5th and the 9th, with the Bisons playing the opponents for the Manitoba Moose, I think is a great start and continues the relationship between the organization and a program that has a lot of talent at the U Sports level, which a lot of people I don't think are really aware of.
Yeah, and it's important for the Moose players to kind of get that opportunity to game situation against players that they aren't practicing against. I think that's kind of the big thing for the Moose. Obviously, it can be tricky, like you were saying, to get those preseason games against AHL competition, just with travel the way it is, where the Moose are located. It's not like you're one of those Midwest teams in the States where Chicago, you've got 2 teams within an hour's travel, right? So that's a bit tricky. But again, that relationship with the Bisons, of course, they had the one exhibition game against them last season, and University of Regina Cougars as well. Prior to that, we've seen the Bisons up against the Moose as well. So it gives those players, we were talking about how quick and how small that opportunity is to show what you can do. Those are big moments for those players, and the Bisons players certainly get up for it as well, as they want to show well against the pros. So it's an interesting dynamic, and it should be a fun couple of games.
Hey, I think, and I know things will kind of become a lot more clear in the next, couple weeks as we get closer to puck drop. But I just wanted to ask you about the goaltending situation for the Manitoba Moose. You've got Oskari Salminen. it is likely that Colin Delia will be sent to the Moose. I think it's quite clear that Laurent Brossoit and Connor Hellebuck are a very clear 1-2 with that club. And then you've got the youngster Thomas Milic. There will be an option, I guess, to send him to the East Coast League, and he could probably play 55, 60 games there, getting him rolled out night in and night out. But what do you make of Milic's opportunity and chance? Certainly he's shooting to try to spend this year in the American Hockey League and stay as close to the NHL as possible.
I mean, for Milic, I mean, the longer that Colin Delia remains with the Winnipeg Jets, it certainly helps him be able to show what he can do in the crease against AHL competition and get more time with the pros. As for what the future holds, who knows? I mean, that's definitely going to come down to what the coaching staff, the organization thinks. Of course, Milic currently doesn't have a deal, right? So it doesn't have isn't on an AHL or NHL contract. So something that still needs to get worked out transaction wise and paperwork wise. So we'll see what the Jets and Moose management have in store for him, but an opportunity ahead of him right now as he gets a little time between the crease.
Dan, fill us in on the schedule for the training camp over the next little bit. They mentioned that first preseason game is on Thursday, and then following Monday, Thanksgiving Monday, I believe, is the other one.
You got me scrambling for my schedule here, Huss. Had the roster up, didn't have the schedule up. Yeah, I mean, looking at it's a pretty busy little sprint here. So going to be back on the ice at Hockey for All Center at 10 a.m. tomorrow, and same for Wednesday. Not sure. Originally, it was looking like two groups, but with some of those guys remaining with the Jets, it might just be one. So we'll have to stay tuned for that. And then, like you mentioned, on Thursday, it's a 7:00 exhibition game against University of Manitoba. That's at Wayne Fleming Arena, and I think you can actually get tickets for that one through the Bison's website. So they'll be off on Friday. Inter-squad game on Saturday at 11. So a nice kind of early skate for the guys and get them the rest of the day after that. So if you're looking to check out some hockey on Saturday, you can see the guys going up against each other on the 7th. Sunday back on the ice for just a regular skate, and then again, like you were mentioning, those exhibition games on Monday. Realize that's the long weekend Monday there. So an early game, so you can come check out the Moose and the Bisons at Hockey for All Center, and then get to your Thanksgiving celebrations in the evening. So it's just, like we were talking about, camp is here for a good time, not a long time. So the guys need to show what they can do, and then just like that, it's a race towards the home opener on October 13th.
Bring it on, Dan. Awesome having you back on the program. Hope you had a great summer, because it's time to get back to it. We'll look forward to your calls and more visits on WST as we follow the Moose heading into the season. Thanks for doing this.
Well, thanks for having me on, Huss. Like I said, it's great to be back with you guys.
Good stuff, pal. There is Dan Fink, voice of the Moose. You can hear his calls at moosehockey.com, as well as the CGOB website. We are going to talk some Blue Jays coming up in just a minute. Looking forward to having Josh Goldberg join us to set up the Blue Jays and Twins, which gets going tomorrow in the Twin Cities. Before we do that, some great Bomber content with Jeff Hamilton heading into the big game coming up on Friday. Of course, all our Bomber reports are brought to you by Princess Auto, proud sponsors of the Winnipeg Football Club. Princess Auto is where you'll find the best deals on the most unique assortment of tools and equipment around. Everything you need to complete the projects on your list or start something new is at Princess Oz Auto. Visit them online, princessauto.com, or at one of two Winnipeg locations, Panet Road and Portage Avenue West. Well, listen, I know there was a lot of yard work happening around here as of this past weekend, more gorgeous weather. And even the guys at Consolidated Supply, Joe and the gang, still cranking out great irrigation systems and solutions for Winnipeg residences and businesses. Of course, they are the leaders in irrigation, artificial turf, golf carts, and more as the exclusive club car dealer in Manitoba. But Consolidated Supply has other great options for your property, including hot tubs and amazing outdoor kitchen options, and of course, small engine parts and repair. Pop by and see Consolidated Supply at their showroom, open to the public, 1395 Niagara Road East, or find out more online at cte.ca. And just before we bring in Josh, don't forget, gang, Blue Jays playoffs start tomorrow. Do you have faith? Maybe you should be getting down to Royal Sports and grabbing some Jays merch before the playoffs officially begin tomorrow. You know, Royal Sports is been for 40 years the ultimate sports superstore in Winnipeg, with the best and exclusive merchandise for your Winnipeg Jets, Winnipeg Blue Bombers, National Football League, and tons of Jays gear just in time for the playoffs. And with hockey season upon us, you all know that Royal Sports has been and continues to be the ultimate hockey superstore in Winnipeg, family-owned for 40 years. Pop down and see him, Royal Sports, 750 Pembina Highway, and give him a follow on Instagram for the latest merchandise drops and sale information at Royal Sports Pembina. All right, we got some baseball tomorrow for all, well, not necessarily for all the marbles, but to continue to stay in the mix for all of them. And let's welcome in Josh Goldberg from thescore.com to get ready for Twins, Blue Jays, best of three. Josh, what's going on, man? Thanks so much for doing this.
Thanks for having me, Hustler. Yeah, it's that time. Nothing beats postseason baseball, man. We grinded for 162 games, 6 months, 8 months if you include spring training. So, yeah, let's let it get started tomorrow. It's going to be fun.
Well, that's why they let her rip so hard on that champagne celebration, which was, I mean, listen, we can poke fun at it. I mean, there's a lot of hilarity to it, but there's a lot of work that gets into qualifying for it. And even if the circumstances were a little bit bizarre, it was worthy of a party yesterday because everything that the Jays needed to have happen after they lost on Saturday came through. And I think they're in a pretty good spot with the opponent that they wanted.
Yeah, I would say so. I think it's always tough to look at a team and say, ooh, yeah, this is a better matchup for us. I think that's how you run into trouble. You think, like in Toronto, look at the Leafs with the Florida Panthers. That didn't work out so great. Minnesota's, they're not loaded with star power but by any means. A lot of their key guys are banged up and either not going to play, or if they do play, be at far less than 100%, whether you're talking about Carlos Correa or Byron Buxton or Royce Lewis. But the Jays not having to use Kevin Gausman yesterday was gigantic because that just throws everything out of whack. Like if he's unavailable to pitch until even game 3, if you get there, and then that would be on short rest, that's just a disaster scenario. It just throws everyone else into an uncomfortable position. And now you have your ideal starting pitching alignment. It's going to be Gausman in game 1, and then some combination, I would think, of Bassett and Barrios in game 3. And that's a really good games 2 and 3. And that's a really good spot to be in. And yeah, they're set up, but it's on the guys to perform. Yeah, they got to start figuring out a way to do a little bit more at the plate. And that starts with power. And you got to hit some home runs in the postseason. And they've struggled in that category all season.
Yeah, we'll get to the hitting in a minute because that has been confounding at times for a club with so much talent in that room. But as you mentioned, I mean, getting your ace Gausman on the hill and to have the options. I mean, the Jays had 4 guys, even in a season where Alek Manoah flamed out and isn't even with the club anymore. 4 guys with 31 starts or more. At one point, I'm sure it finished this way, all 4 guys sub-4 ERAs. Like, I'm the president of the Kikuchi fan club. I'd love to see him get a start. They would not be here without him. But what's your best guess? If this series goes 3 games, who would the starters be after Gausman? And for the odd man out, let's say it's Kikuchi, how would he be used if needed?
So I think that I could see a situation in which Kikuchi does start because Minnesota does have a lot of left-handed hitters. And he's obviously a powerful lefty, and that could be a good weapon. I would still probably look at Bassett and Barrios as definitely more likely. I think if it were up to me, it sort of depends what happens in the first game. I think if you win game 1, I would start Barrios in game 2, and that's not a situation where it's like I feel less confident in him if you're facing elimination. I just think that I like Bassett in game 2 with your back against the wall if you lose. And if you win game 2, I like Barrios in game 2 to try and pitch you to a sweep. And if you don't get it done, then you have the Bulldog and Bassett in game 3 that I just feel like with all the marbles on the line, he's done it all season long, really. He's arguably been their most consistent pitcher, not their best, but outside of a few hiccups here or there, he's given them a chance basically every time. And that's what you're looking for in a win or go home situation. So I think win, it's Gausman, Barrios, Bassett. Lost game 1, it's Gausman, Bassett, Barrios. You get to game 3.
You know what? It's funny. Just quickly on Kikuchi. I don't know why he was trending, or maybe I just hit so many Kikuchi links, they just fire me things, but whatever. He's coming up on he's trending right now. And this goes back to the start of the season. We had my pal JD Bunkus on the program. We were talking about, everything around the Blue Jays. And he was out on Kikuchi. Everyone was out on Kikuchi, frankly. Give this guy another chance. Kind of half joking, but I wanted to see him do well. But you tweeted this the other day. His rebound and turnaround stands out in Blue Jays history for a guy that literally by most was left for dead, like wasted money. He'll never pitch again for the team, to being a massive reason why this team is in the playoffs when we get going tomorrow.
Oh yeah. He was as valuable as it gets, as needed as it gets. You could say this about any of those you alluded to, 4 starting pitchers, 30-plus starts, a sub-3 ERA. They would have been really, really in a bad spot without any of those guys, with what Alek Manoah was unable to do. They had to cover so much expected ground that he was expected to really fill. And Kikuchi is just a different pitcher. Maybe it was the pitch clock. There was all this talk about how he was just going to not have as much time in between pitches to really get it in his own head. And he just had to get out there and just kind of just go after it and not shake the catcher off and just trust the plan and execute. And his command was way better. There were way fewer outings or even at bats within outings where he just had no idea where his stuff was going. And even the few times maybe his command wasn't at its best, he battled. Like last year, if things kind of slipped in the first inning, he would crumble and he couldn't rally whatsoever. This year he battled, he gutted it out. And it became pretty clear that he was a popular guy in that clubhouse. The guys really like him. You always see in starts that he's not on the mound, joking around in the dugout, laughing, smiling. And we saw it last year when he was struggling. They really went to bat for him and they had his back. There was no, backing the bus up over him. It was, we're going to continue to ride with this guy. And if he's not in the rotation, I think with, like I said, Minnesota being so left-hand heavy, I think that you can find a spot. Like if you don't like somebody's first turn and a half through the rotation, but you're still in a tie game, or maybe you're down a run or up a run, and then you can go to Kikuchi because the matchups dictate it. I think there's some flexibility with how you might be able to use him in a series like this. So I wouldn't be surprised if he's valuable for them in these 3 games.
Well, and, in the pitching overall, I just found this tweet that, in a lot of ways, I think speaks to, the story of the year for Toronto. Bassett, Kikuchi, and Barrios, the guys labeled okay depth guy, might not make the roster, and lost cause, are now your AL leader in wins, dependable big arm with 9.7 K per 9, and workhorse with a top 10 AL ERA. If there's one maybe question mark about the pitching going into this series, it's Jordan Romano, who was on a streak of 26 straight saves and has had 2 hiccups over the past week. Is there any concern on that, or you just have to realize that this is the guy that got you there and have confidence that he'll be able to get it done?
I think there's always concern with high leverage relievers when they have hiccups, especially in the playoffs. You have to at least, you can't just sweep it under the rug. I'm not going to, my hair's not on fire. I'm not panicking, but I think that it wouldn't shock me if there's a situation where maybe they go to Jordan Hicks first. The thing about the playoffs is you use your bullpen differently. I don't think it's just a guarantee that Jordan Romano is going to be saved for a theoretical save situation in the bottom of the 9th or in the bottom of the 9th inning. I think if the bases are loaded or there's 2 on in the 6th or 7th, and you like the matchup against maybe the meat of the order, you could go to your closer in that situation. You manage what's in front of you instead of what might be coming. And I think that John Schneider last year in the postseason struggled a little bit with that, especially in game 2 with the whole Gausman situation, maybe not reading that in the right way. But I still think that I said this on my podcast, that when you watch 162 games of one team, you have tunnel vision to only that one team, and you're not really that aware of what's going on other teams. If you watched 162 games really of any team, you would be saying a lot of the same things about other teams' closers that you say about Jordan Romano. Yes, would you like to see him throw his fastball a little bit more? Would you like his fastball to be more consistent? For sure. He's got a great slider. If his fastball command was better, obviously it would obviously be better. But by and large, the results are very good. And if you want to pick out a few hiccups, you certainly can. But the larger body of work over really 3 seasons now, since early in 2021, has been one of the better closers, not just in the American League, but in all of Major League Baseball, a top third of the league closer. So I'm not going to just say, oh, yeah, I have to abandon him because of a couple of bumps down the stretch. I'm just going to let it fly with him. And if it burns me, it burns me. But I want to go down with my best in the postseason. And I still think that right there with Hicks, he's my best.
Well, we spent a lot of time talking about pitching. Let's get to the hitting, because this was such a confounding team for a good portion of the year, with all the talent, with what we know that these guys can do at the plate. The inability to hit consistently and hit with runners in scoring position was a big reason why this came down to nail-biting time watching a game between the Rangers and Mariners in game 161. Where are things at right now? Can they turn it on? Is there reasons to be confident that, maybe we'll see a level of plate discipline and execution that we didn't see in the regular season, Josh? Because you're not going to win. You can get the best pitching, but if you don't plate any runs, you're not winning.
Yeah, their plate discipline improved as the season went along. In September, they were walking quite a bit. They weren't chasing much, which is obviously very encouraging. Their runners in scoring position numbers did improve really from early August on. Some of that was inflated by games where they really strung it together and there were still too many instances where they would really scuffle. There's not a lot that's just saying, oh yeah, they're all of a sudden going to go on this crazy tear or binge. But they do have the talent that, if it did happen, we couldn't sit here and say, oh my God, that's the most shocking thing that's ever happened. There's clearly enough talent here. That's why we've been saying it all season long. It's bound to click in at some point. There's too much talent here for it not to. And the thing is, I don't think they need to do that much. If you can find a way to score 4 runs most games, 4 or 5 runs, which in the playoffs is easier said than done. With this pitching staff, you're going to like your chances. But to me, it really comes down to, you can't rely on stringing 2 or 3 hits together with runners in scoring position. There has to be some occasions where you clear the bags with a 2 or 3 run homer. And they struggled. I think they finished the season 18th in Major League Baseball as a team in home runs, which is really surprising considering where they've been and honestly what the expectations were heading into the season. But if they struggle to hit home runs, especially against the Twins, who were 3rd as a team in home runs, then there's a real chance that this series doesn't go the way that Blue Jays fans want it to.
Josh, I have to ask you about the managers in this. You got Big John Schneider, Rocco Baldelli. I'd be lying if I wasn't worried about a boneheaded mistake by the Blue Jays manager being impactful in this series. Listen, what do you make of the matchup between these managers, and how much is going to be on John Schneider to step his game up at the most important time of the year?
A lot. I think there's a lot of pressure on both of them. Baldelli, I believe, is 0-5 in his career as a manager. The Twins haven't won a playoff series since 2002. I believe they've lost 18 straight playoff games. It's been rough for them. So there's a lot of pressure on both of these guys. And for Schneider, it's just about reading situations right. If Alejandro Kirk's up with a runner on first base, don't be trigger shy to get the runner moving so you don't have a situation where he's a real double play threat. And we saw it happen in the series against the Rays. Just little things, moving the runner. I don't personally love bunting, but if there's a situation that calls for it, maybe there's a situation that calls for it. And then obviously your bullpen deployment, playing the matchups the right way, not necessarily just going to Jimmy Garcia or Trevor Richards because it's the 5th inning and, I want to save Jordan Hicks and Eric Swanson and Romano till later. Like I said, I always think back to Buck Showalter in 2016, and it's not quite an apples and to apples comparison, but don't wait around for a possible save situation or a possible important scenario that might never occur. Like, just manage what's in front of you. And if you need to make another tough call later in the game, cross that bridge when it comes to it. I just don't think that you can have a crystal ball in the postseason. There has to be a lot of feel and just a lot of living in the moment decisions and going with your staff and your gut and making those right calls. And it's on him now to do it, because if it doesn't go according to plan, he's going to be, I think, under some major scrutiny.
Josh Goldberg with us on Winnipeg Sports Talk. Jays and Twins tomorrow, game 1, just after 3:30 Winnipeg time. They'll do it again in game 2 on Wednesday at the same time. Josh, this was awesome. Thank you for doing this, folks. Get over to thescore.com. Great preview of the series from Josh, and fill people in on the Designated for Assignment podcast and what you've got coming up there as we head into the postseason.
Yeah, I have a series preview up wherever you get your podcast. You can find it on Twitter at DFA_pod. You can find me at JGoldberg12 on Twitter, breaking it down. I'll be back as well. Maybe not after every game. We'll see how it goes around my schedule, but do my best to break down the games as they happen. And hopefully it's a long run. Just at least win one game. That's all I'm asking. At the very least, don't get swept.
Well, you know what? And listen, I hope that they can make it through. And I hope that we might be able to do this again, talking about more Blue Jays playoff baseball if you've got some time to join us. Really enjoyed the conversation, Josh. Thanks for doing this.
Anytime, Hustler. Give me a shout. Happy to do it.
Right on. There is Josh Goldberg with us. And again, Designated for Assignment is the podcast. Wherever you're getting WST, you can get that. You can also check him out on Twitter and on X. Hey, Monday Night Football tonight. We'll get to the Coolbet Lines in a minute. The Seattle Seahawks and the New York Giants. Interesting matchup. We'll get to that in a moment. But hey, if you're looking for a great spot to go enjoy Monday Night Football with your crew, you know where to do that. Your local Boston Pizza. The big game on the big screen. Great prizes at all the Boston Pizzas on all Monday Night Footballs. And maybe most importantly, ice cold schooners, world famous BP wings, gourmet pizzas, and all the other great stuff, including the latest on the BP feature menu. And hey, if you are staying at home tonight, you can always get the great taste of BP by ordering online at bostonpizza.com. And if you're lucky, your local BP might be on skip as well. And hey, a big shout out to our friends at Little Brown Jug. Saw the LBJs at the Bomber game on Friday, and don't forget, folks, Little Brown Jug is now an official partner of the Winnipeg Jets and is available at Canada Life Centre in the new craft beer corner, up in section 310 in the bar there, as well as in the north and south ends of the main concourse. So, new choices for Jet fans when it comes to cold beer at the games. And thank God, Winnipeg's favorite local beer, Little Brown Jug, is part of that. Pick it up on Thursday's exhibition game against the Ottawa Senators and throughout this year down at Canada Life Centre. All right, let's get Michael Remis back in here. And Rima, I have to admit, I'm really fired up for this Blue Jays game tomorrow night after talking to Josh. This is going to be fun. I think the Jays absolutely can win this series. And I'll tell you what, I've thought about this all year long. They have been underwhelming. They have been disappointing at times. It took way too long for them to clinch their spot. But I just can't help but think when you look at the talent on that club that certainly is a path that this team could get hot right now. And if they do, they're going to be a tough out.
I agree with you that, they have the talent. They're a really good team, but I think they've been, suffering with disappointment since that series this time last year against Seattle. And they should be ready here. They've got great pitching, but I think on the other side, Minnesota is another team that's had a lot of playoff disappointment in the last 20 years. Sorry, did he say 18 straight playoff games that they've lost? Like they haven't won a series in forever. And
they've been first place at times, playing wild card team, just boom, losing every game.
Yeah, I'm curious. It is a great matchup, and I'm curious also how many Jays fans are going to make it down. Ken and Mike going down. Can we, Mike McIntyre? I've seen people in chat. I saw Zach wrote that he was going down.
Yeah, I was going to say, anybody in chat that's going to be getting up bright and early tomorrow or even tonight and heading down to the Twin Cities for a little playoff baseball?
Yeah, let us know. I'm curious. So I think will there be a Jays contingent there in blue amongst the Minnesota Twins fans there? So yeah, going to be a great series. Afternoon playoff baseball right after WST. Turn it on. Exciting stuff here. So every pitch, you're on the edge of your seat. Playoff baseball, unlike any other playoffs, I feel like.
Oh man, no doubt about it. And I mean, man, it was I went and we'll talk about this in the Coolbet Lines in a minute, but I was mighty invested in the Montreal Ottawa game on Saturday afternoon, and went by my local to watch the second half of that game, hung around for a bit, and then the Rangers-Mariners game came on, and the Texas got up early, held it down, won the game. But I mean, even that was tense, and the Blue Jays weren't even involved in that game, but there was still a lot on the line. So everything that they wanted had to happen. Gausman gets the start tomorrow, 3:30. We will lead you into Blue Jays baseball for the next couple days on Winnipeg Sports Talk. Make sure to be joining us live on the YouTube channel. And, of course, make sure that you are subscribed. Yes, to the Coolbet Lines. And I have to admit, Reem, part of the reason why I was so invested in the Montreal game on Saturday was that we got two borderline miracle covers on Friday night. Shout out to Sergio Castillo and the Bombers for that late field goal that put them over the 7.5-point spread, confirming the win. And I went out after the game to see what was happening in that BC-Saskatchewan game. It was 33-11 with about 3 minutes left in the game, and I said, well, the partner parlay is screwed. We had Saskatchewan plus 10, and then saw that they scored a touchdown with 1:40 left and then another one with 10 seconds left to cover the spread. So if you rode with us on that CFL partner parlay, always have faith, everybody. Plus 630 it came in. Was a very nice bonus to the weekend. Had some nice wins on the Ryder Cup. Kind of up and down with the NFL. The Dolphins game really, really screwed us yesterday for the NFL partner parlay because we had the Bucs, was all over them, the under in the Cleveland-Baltimore game, but the Dolphins got smoked, and that was not good for the partner parlay. For tonight's game, Seahawks are a short favorite on the road at the Giants. -2.5 is the number on Seattle. Giants +2.5. This was 2 earlier today. I've seen the money line has changed. And again, the money line is just for a team to win. Seattle was -25. It's now -135. So a little bit of cheese coming in on the Seattle Seahawks. Now let's quickly get over to the Blue Jays because all the lines are up. And, man, this is you can just see how close this Blue Jays-Twins game is and this series is. Game number 1, the Jays, a minuscule underdog. I mean, this is basically a pick 'em. Twins -109, Jays -104. But for the series, Toronto is, wow, this is totally flipped since earlier this morning. When I first saw this and we were doing the lock ship, the Jays were even money. And the Twins were a slight favorite at -114. Well, that's flipped. The Twins are now even money, and the Blue Jays are -120. So Jays fans are ponying up, getting behind their team right now. -120 for the Blue Jays to win the series. If you do think the Blue Jays are going to win 2-1, you can bet that at +275. Jays 2-0 +300. Probably better off now that I think about it. Remis, you're a smart guy. You've got a accounting background.
Sure.
What's a better move? To put $100 on the Blue Jays at -120.
Yeah.
So let's just see. If we did that, that would pay you back $183.33. Or instead of that, to put $50 on the Jays to win 2-1, which would pay $187.5.
Ooh.
And $50 on the Jays to win 2-0 at +300, which would return $200. I think we just answered the question. You're better off to split your bet between Jays 2-1, Jays 2-0, and you'd get more of a return. That's some big lock shot insight here on the on WST.
That's some good math, Hus. Yeah, if you're betting the Jays to win, I mean, there's only two possible combinations, 2-1 or 2-0.
2-0. And both, you're either winning 187 or 200 if you split the bet.
Yeah.
Or if you just put it on the money line. So anyways, that's probably going to change quickly. So if you're thinking about doing that, get in right now because the series correct scores haven't changed like the lineup has. Other series, I'm just interested to see what these series odds are. Rays minus 182 favorites against the Texas Rangers. And Rangers plus 155. The Brewers and Arizona Diamondbacks. Brewers are the favorites at minus 175. Arizona plus 150. That one's off the board right now, though. It seems like something's moving. And then the Phillies and Marlins. Phillies minus 200. Marlins plus 170. There's always an upset or two, Reem. Where are the upsets in the first round?
Oh, man. Upset, I'll go with... Oh, man. In the first round here, Diamondbacks? That...
D-backs plus 150?
Yeah, I'll go with the D-backs there.
They surprised me how good they were there this year. I was just sort of used to them being so brutal for the last couple seasons. I didn't really see them going out. I like the Brewers. I love Milwaukee. Good town. I'd like to see them win. I wouldn't mind seeing the Marlins stick it to the Phillies. Bryce Harper very angry at the end of the season on callings from umpires.
I saw that. I loved him getting fired up at Angel Hernandez. One guy on Philly that I got my eye on, Kyle Schwarber. I think he had close to 50 homers this year. We know how good he was.
Playoff monster, man.
Man, every time I look at the box score, because I had Nick Castellanos in fantasy, I'd be like, oh, did Castellanos homer? No, it was Kyle Schwarber. It seemed like every day Kyle Schwarber homered, and they're very experienced. They've been there before. They got my guy Aaron Nola pitching, although he's kind of had a down second half. So I do like the Phillies, although I saw people tweeting like this is some Marlins fan was so ecstatic that they made the playoffs for the first time in, I can't even remember, since, was it 2003? Like when they won? Was that really I'm trying to remember. Anyways,
the last time?
He's like, I survived. They had this guy and this guy. I remember when they had Reggie Abercrombie in center field. I met this guy gave Reggie a shout out. So, man, it's been a long time. They made the playoffs. Okay. I got to pull this. I'll tell you. It's been a long time.
You can Google that. In the meantime, what do we got here? Jets. Okay, so yeah, Jets tonight in Calgary. Again, it's very degen to bet the NHL preseason, but if you think you got an edge, go ahead, fire away. Jets plus 170 tonight. Flames minus 213. Flames puck line to win by 2 plus 133. Pretty much a full lineup for Calgary. And a number of Winnipeg Jets staying home, still under the weather right now. What do we got? We got 7 games in the NHL preseason tonight. Habs Leafs going head-to-head. And, Patrick Laine. I wonder if he'll be playing center tonight.
He is playing center.
Are they? Okay, now I actually have a reason to sniff out that Blues-Blue Jackets game tonight. And I don't know whether Jansen Harkins is going to get in. Probably not because he just got claimed today. But the Penguins are playing the Ottawa Senators. And then when is wasn't it the Avalanche and the Penguins are going to be playing a game in Nova Scotia, I heard?
Penguins played. That's Penguins Senators. They played.
Oh, so
Frankie McDonald was there. I don't know if you saw. He was big Sens fan. Frankie McDonald in the house for that.
No way.
Yeah. Oh,
so
and
that's already taken place?
Yeah. I don't know if there's. I'm not even following if there's more than one game, but I know they're there. They're going into Crosby's. The shooting pucks into his dryer. His parents are delivering the team pastries.
Well, it's a 5:00 game.
Maybe it is there.
So,
they probably went to play 2.
That game will be there. For whatever reason, I thought that it was going to be. I thought it was the Avs, so they could have. McKinnon.
Yeah, they didn't. Oh, that is today. Nova Scotia Showdown.
Yeah, there it is.
at
Ottawa
the
and the Pittsburgh Penguins.
That'll be
Anyways,
fun.
it's all up there at Coolbet. Use the promo code WST if you haven't played a Coolbet before. Hook you up with a 100% bonus up to $200 on your first deposit.
One thing about tonight's Jets game, people asking where can we watch it? Not on TSN 3 tonight because they're showing Monday Night Football. So it will be on winnipegjets.com for the game. So make sure you got your computer, or I tried getting it on the NHL app on the Fire Stick. Didn't work. So I had to go to the browser app and type it in. It was kind of annoying to get on my TV, but you know what? I'll figure it out. I'll watch on my computer, whatever. Winnipeg Jets. I mean, it's preseason, like we saw.
CTO skills once again.
Yeah,
showing off.
We saw the lineup. Here it is. We'll see what happens. How they fill in. No Shifley, no Barron.
Yeah,
Lambert, Tornado going
to the
in.
sick crew. So there you have it. I like the way you just crossed the guys out. Didn't replace them. They've just been
well, we
crossed
don't
and then
know.
late.
It was the last second scratch. So I don't know. I don't want to put something wrong. So
Parker Ford getting another game as well. He'll be playing with Capari and presumably Toninato, unless AJF moves up and Toninato plays with Gus and VL on that fourth line.
Who's gonna go with Iafallo and Nemestikov? They can put Kupari in there, move him up, and put Lambert with Ford and Tornado. I don't know.
Either that or maybe just put Lambert right into Shifley's spot.
Yeah,
see how he does.
I thought about that. Thought about that too.
Why not? And Appleton moving up into Ehlers' spot along with Perfetti and Nino on that line. Hey, before we go, I know we've talked a lot of Jets. We've hit the Bombers, and we'll get into much more Bomber talk getting closer to the big game on Friday night. We hit the Blue Jays. Did not talk much about the Ryder Cup, which was awesome as always. And a little closer than a lot of people thought on clinching day for the Europeans. But they got it done. I did get up early yesterday, not quite at 6:30 or whatever time it started, but had it on PVR, watched it. It was actually late for watching football because I got so into it. And man, the weekend was wild. The Joe LaCava incident and the hats off for Patrick Cantlay. The European fans are so hilarious with some of their chants and taunts. So the Ryder Cup was amazing. But because I was watching Ryder Cup all Sunday morning, I was not tuned in to an epic London clash between the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Atlanta Falcons. Did you watch that game, Remo? And was there some alternate broadcast that you were all fired up about?
I watched the alternate Toy Story broadcast, the Disney Plus production, where they took the game and made it into animated characters as it was happening, as if it was played out in Andy's room from the movie Toy Story. It was us. This was I watched it with my wife. She's like, "Oh my god, this is so cool." And my son, who's 4, he's familiar with Toy Story, not entirely though, but definitely knows the characters. He was even interested. So anything that would get him to be watching football, which is usually a no-go, I loved it. So they had the characters from the aliens were working the camera. It's Slinky Dog, Rex was doing demonstrations on the rules. They had, so to drop the ball, they had the claw, from the game, the claw machine, drop the ball. They would go to first person view, sometimes inside the quarterback's helmet. So that's how I watched the game. Oh, and the commentators were animated as well. Booger McFarland, and I forget who's doing play-by-play, but it was so well done, Huss. I hope they do more of these. I'm a big fan of the Nickelodeon one, but that Toy Story broadcast, super cool. They had the Buzz and Woody on the sidelines.
Was it on TV, or did you have
streaming?
To have some...
It was streaming only on Disney Plus.
And so people have that in Canada too. That's not just an American thing.
Yeah. So
interesting.
It was, and the NHL. Someone says the NHL did a stream last year with something Greens. I didn't watch it. It didn't resonate with me. But Toy Story,
I saw some of that. That was, I think, a Rangers Capitals game, and it was basically, it looked like a video game, but in real time they had the players come around and listen, this is all cool.
Yes.
And they're trying to get new fans. They're trying to grow the game, as it were. Much like the NFL going so all in to, I mean, basically Taylor Swift goes to a game and it takes over the broadcast, the NFL Twitter account, everything else. I'm still waiting for a television number from last night's game, Reem. But as I said, I think it is going to smash records because that's what comes with Taylor Swift. I could do without maybe the entire Hollywood A-lister crew in the suite, but hey, whatever. It was quite the note. And by the way, as much as, I mean, I am a Mahomes guy. He's the man. But even I was shocked and appalled at him doing the right thing at the end of that game and going down, but not going in for a for sure touchdown, which would have covered the spread and supported everyone that was on the Chiefs wagon against the number last night.
I have Mahomes in fantasy in the WST Western League. I don't even know who I'm playing against, but I needed that touchdown. I was pretty annoyed that he did the right thing and slid instead of going for the touchdown. Come on. I was also annoyed at the interceptions that he threw, but we know the Jets.
Yeah, those were two really weird. That entire game was bizarre. I mean, they just steamrolled them, go up 17-0. And then Jawan Taylor, who is just, I mean, a flag magnet right now, ever since, game number 1 on Thursday night where he was lining up off the ball. He just seems to be the target right now. But yeah, the minute, he gave up that safety with the penalty, completely flipped that game. And Zach Wilson was awesome. Now, I mean, I'm not sure, and I know there's some comments in chat. I mean, Chris Collinsworth was completely enamored with Zach Wilson. And I'll be honest, I'm a Chiefs guy. I wanted them to win. I couldn't help but kind of cheering for Zach as well last night, just with everything that he's been through. Listen, that was as good as he's looked. So maybe he's going to figure it out and he'll be there. But I mean, if he played like that every game this year, the Jets make the playoffs. The rest of their team is that good, if you ask me.
All right, you wanted that number for the game?
Yeah.
Jimmy Traina tweeting out, no surprise here. NBC gets monster number for Sunday Night Football. 27 million viewers for Chiefs Jets, which seems insane in 2023.
Allow me to Barry Horowitz myself. I called this on the show last week, Reem. We went through the numbers. The average Sunday night audience is 20 million. And I was asking Pat and the Coolbet guys, can we get an over-under? I think it's going to go up by like 5 million or more. Mm-hmm. Up 7 million or more. Monster number. Nobody surprised. The T Swift effect. And and it is kind of funny how the NFL is leading into this so much. But I'll tell you what, they're smart. They realize that this is the greatest gift wrap marketing opportunity they could possibly have to introduce a bunch of people that normally haven't given a damn about the NFL to the game. And if you can make a few new fans that way, go for it. But they are leaning in hard. I have a feeling that's the end of Taylor at the games. I highly doubt she'll be in the Twin Cities watching the Chiefs and Vikings next week. But if she does show up, I'll be on the lookout for her. Boots on the ground, on the case.
My favorite part of the game actually has, and I agree with you with that, as the beginning of the game where they showed Aaron Rodgers in the stands. And they're like, Aaron Rodgers wants to be there with his teammates. He's rehabbing in LA. He wants to go there to do a motivational speech, show him that he's with them. Like, what are you talking about? He knows it's going to be a hugely viewed game on Sunday Night Football. He wants them to go see him on TV. He doesn't care about the team. He wants to be shown in the box, let everyone know that he's still hanging around the team. I mean,
I'm surprised he didn't weasel into the Taylor Swift box for more TV time.
Yeah, he wanted the TV time on Sunday Night Football. That's a Sunday afternoon game or a noon game. He's not flying in from LA, no chance.
I'm like, well, what are you like? Why are you not on the sidelines? Because does that not, you might be able to be a bit of a help to Zach. I mean, anyways, don't get me going in on Aaron Rodgers. But anyways, now that game is over, I'm all in on Zach Wilson. I hope he has a great season. I hope he actually turns into at least an adequate NFL quarterback because they really do have a great team. That Garrett Wilson is a stud. Their defense is elite. And it was a weird one, but a fun one last night. And yes, Chiefs-Vikings next week. Big win for the Vikes. They get off the schneid, get their first win of the year. And I will be at that one. I'm sure there's probably a few more of you in the chat that are going to be out there as well. All right, well, listen, a great show today. Tomorrow, we're going to have another big one. Scott Billick will be with us for the latest on the Winnipeg Jets. We'll talk a little Bombers as they get ready for the BC Lions. And we will get ready for Blue Jays baseball right after the live edition of Winnipeg Sports Talk as a 3:30 start. And, of course, we'll recap what happens tonight between the Jets and the Calgary Flames. Last game you won't have on TV. It is available at winnipegjets.com. And then we're back at it at home one more time on Thursday for the game against the Ottawa Senators. Huge thanks to the sponsors that make the show happen every day. All of you for making us a part of yours. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. 10K by October 11th. That's the goal. Have a great Monday night, folks. Enjoy Monday Night Football. We'll see you tomorrow right here on WST. Have a good one.
Oh, my God. Oh! Shut it down. Let's go home.
Thanks for tuning in to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast feed at winnipegsportstalk.com.